Welcome to the December 19th rezoning meeting of the Charlotte City Council. Happy holidays to all that are out there. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, all those that celebrate. We will call this meeting to order, and we will start with introductions of us that are sitting around the dais, and we'll start all the way to my left.
Okay. Good evening. Terry Hagler-Gray, Senior Assistant City Attorney.
Good evening. Dante Anderson, District 1.
Charles Picard, District 6. Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Braxton Winston, serve as Mayor Pro Tem.
Liz Babson, City Manager's Office.
Happy holidays, LaWanna Mayfield, serving you at large.
Happy holidays, Renee Johnson, District 4.
Good evening, happy holiday. James Mitchell, serving you, City Council at large.
Happy holidays, Dimple Ashmira, at large.
Billy Tons, Deputy City Clerk.
Thank you very much. We will begin our meeting with an invocation, which is an expression, an inspiration, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation by the council member is intended to solemnize our proceedings. We celebrate the religious diversity of our community, including those without a religious faith. Tonight, Councilmember Ashmira will be so gracious to give us our invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Winston. And I would like to take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy holidays. I hope you have a safe, healthy, and happy holidays. Merry Christmas. And I really appreciate all of you that you are here today, that are watching at home or even here too, especially during holidays week. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ashmira. And if you are able to, please stand, give the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to an explanation of the zoning process. The process begins with an application submitted to our planning staff for review. There are cases of two types that are on the agenda: decisions and hearings. Decisions on cases are cases for which a public hearing was previously held and no further public comment will be had tonight. Hearings consist of anybody wishing to speak. They should see the clerk before the start of the particular hearing that you are here to speak towards. Staff will have a presentation, and that presentation will have no time limit. Then the petitioner and those in favor get 3 minutes combined to present their case, unless there are opponents assigned to speak, or if staff is in opposition. Then the petitioner will get 10 minutes, the opponent gets 10 minutes combined, and then the petitioner will get a 2-minute rebuttal. If no one is opposed or signed up to speak, staff provides a short presentation, the public hearing is closed, and then the next public hearing is open. Then, after the hearing, the petition goes to the Zoning Committee of the Planning Commission for review and recommendation. At this time, I would like to introduce the Zoning Committee Chair, Phil Gussman, and allow the Zoning Committee to introduce themselves.
Hi, happy holidays, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm Phil Gussman, Chairman of the Zoning Committee of the Planning Commission. Allow me to introduce my fellow committee members. I'd like to introduce my Vice Chair, Douglas Welton, Ronnie Harvey, Melissa Gaston, Courtney Rhodes, Will Russell, and Terry Lansdell. The Zoning Committee will meet Wednesday, January 4th at 5:30 p.m. here at the Government Center, Conference Room 280. At that meeting, the Zoning Committee will meet to discuss and make recommendations on the petitions that have public hearings tonight. The public is welcome at that meeting, but please note it is not a continuation of the public hearing that is being held here tonight. Prior to that meeting, you're welcome to contact us to provide input. You can find contact information and information on each petition on the city's website at charlotteplanning.org. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. Just one last note, and if this is a relevant note for today, something has gone terribly wrong. We have a 10 p.m. recess, and the City Council may recess long zoning meetings at 10 p.m. and reconvene at a later date. I do not see that happening tonight. So don't prove me wrong, Council. Now we will move on to the deferral and withdrawal portion of our meeting. I will read the deferrals and withdrawals, and these can be passed all in one motion. Item number 15, petition number 2021-238, Lennar, Carolinas, for approximately 5.12 acres in the south side of NC Music Factory Boulevard. That is a petition for withdrawal. Item number 16, 2022-042, by Brian Ignema, for approximately 22.9 acres located on the west side of Harrisburg Road in District 5. They are looking for a deferral on their decision to January 17th. Item 17, 2021-285, Providence Capital Group, for approximately 5.9 acres located on the west side of South Boulevard in District 3, Ms. Watlington's district. They're requesting a deferral of their decision until January 17th. Item number 25, 2022-043, by Lucrum 7 LLC, for approximately 0.58 acres located on the northwest intersection of Lamar Avenue and East 7th Street in Council District 1 in Ms. Anderson's district. They are requesting a withdrawal of their hearing. Item number 26, 2022-113, by Good Properties, which is approximately 1.02 acres located on the east side of Providence Road in Council District 6, Mr. Bakari's district. They're requesting a withdrawal of their hearing. Item number 27, 2022-142, SHJ Construction Group, for approximately 1.59 acres located on the southwest intersection of Prosperity Church Road and Robert Helms Road in Council District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. They are requesting a withdrawal of their hearing. Item number 28, 2022-277, by Buildum LLC, for approximately 0.4 acres located on the east side of Providence Road on the north side of Phil All Place on Council District 1, Ms. Anderson's district. They are requesting a deferral of their hearing until January 17th. Item number 29, 2022-029, by Wade Miller, Skyline Townhomes LLC, for approximately 0.35 acres located along the west side of Siegel Avenue and the east side of Van Every Street, south of Belmont in Council District 1, Ms. Anderson's district. They are requesting a deferral of their hearing until January 17th, 2023. Item number 30, 2022-037, by Suncap Property LLC, for approximately 2.01 acres on the northeast intersection of East Boulevard and Scott Avenue in Council District 1, Ms. Anderson's district. They are requesting a deferral of their hearing until January 17th. Item number 31, 2022-066, Wood Partners, for approximately 13.5 acres located on the northeast intersection of Albemarle Road and Novant Health Parkway in Council District 5, Ms. Molina's district. They are requesting a deferral of their hearing until January 17th. Item number 36, 2022-059, Taylor Morrison, for approximately 50.7 acres located on the west side of Garrison Road, east of Dixie River Road in the ETJ in County Commission District 2, and the closest to City Council District 3, Ms. Watlington's district. They're requesting deferral of their hearing until January 17th. And finally, item number 39, 2022-092, by Sam Smart, for for approximately 2.8 acres located on the south side of Albemarle Road and the west side of Redmond Road in Council District 5, Ms. Molina's district. They are requesting a deferral of their hearing until January 17th. Do I have a motion to approve the withdrawals and deferrals?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion being properly made and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. So we will now move on to the decisions portion of our agenda. We will start with our consent agenda items. Rezoning petition items number 4 through 19 may be considered in one motion except for those items pulled by a council member. Ms. Mayfield has requested item number 12, petition 2022-067, be pulled for a separate vote. Please note that all the other petitions meet the following criteria. There was no opposition in the petition to the petition at the hearing. The zoning committee recommended approval, and there were no changes after the zoning committee's recommendation. And also that staff recommends approval of these petitions. Are there any additional consent agenda items council would like to pull for question, comment, or a separate vote? Noting that Ms. Mayfield has requested number 12 to be pulled for a separate vote.
Move to adopt and approve. Second.
Second. All except 12.
Thank you very much. I have a motion to approve the following petitions and to adopt the zoning committee's statement of consistency for each of these petitions as they appear in our agendas as the council's own. Item number 4, petition 2021-083. Petition number 5, petition 2022-003. Petition number 6, petition 2022-015. Petition number 7, 2022-034. Item number 8, petition 2022-041. Item number 9, petition 2022-056. Item number 10, petition 2022-061. Item number 11, petition 2022-064. Petition number 13, petition 2022-072. And item number 14, petition 2022-165. Do I have any comments on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. We do have some items that have changes after the zoning committee's recommendation. We will have a vote when those items come up on whether or not they should be sent back to the zoning committee. And just for council's recollection, we would need a 3/4 vote not to send that back to the zoning committee. All right. So we're going to move to item number 12.
Move to adopt and approve 12. Second.
Item number 12 is a rezoning petition 2022-067 by CC Fund 3-LLC for approximately 15.92 acres located at the southwest intersection of Sam Wilson Road and Wilkinson Boulevard, north of Old Dow Road in the ETJ County Commission District 2, which is closest to Ms. Watlington's district. The current zoning is I2, general industrial conditional, with Lower Lake Wiley protected area. B2, general business, Lower Lake Wiley protected area. The proposed zoning is TOD NC, transit oriented development, neighborhood center, Lower Lake Wiley protected area. The zoning committee voted 7-0 to recommend approval of this petition. We do have, Ms. Bakari made a motion to approve this petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as it appears in our agendas and on the screen as the council's own. And it was seconded by Mr. Graham. Do we have any discussion? I recognize Ms. Mayfield for discussion.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Our council colleague, Ms. Watlington, who is the closest city council representative to this area, has been in communication with the residents in this ETJ area. So I do want to remind my colleagues, and for those who did not have a chance to read her email, advise you that in line with concerns expressed during the zoning committee discussion, I am reading from her email, I'm extremely concerned with approving speculative TOD petitions along future unfunded Silver Line routes. This exacerbated displacement, particularly on the east and west sides. Furthermore, without a real infrastructure plan in place, setting a precedent at this time is detrimental to our most vulnerable. Please join me in denying this petition. I have expressed this concern with the petitioner's agent. So Councilmember Watlington did ask for us to consider a denial for this particular petition based on the concerns from the community, and I will be supporting her recommendation.
Thank you. Are you making a substitute motion?
Substitute motion for petition 2022-067, move to deny.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the substitute motion. All in favor of the substitute?
Just got a question, if I may, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
I think anytime when the council member of that district weighs in and brings to us what I call legitimate concerns, so do we have staff to address the Silver Line and lack of funding, Watlington's issue?
A question about funding for the Silver Line, is that, who would address that? Is that the question? That'd be the CATS, our partners in CATS. As far as addressing the actual funding for that project and when that timeline is, yeah, that would be our partners in CATS.
Do we have someone here representing Catch Day?
I do not believe we do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
And
Mr. Bakari?
So it's tough when it gets to this point, right? And so did anyone know this was coming? Does the petitioner know and has decided to roll the dice, or are they unaware? Can you give us a little more context?
so
It was noted that, from Councilmember Watlington, that she had spoken with the petitioners.
And they just
to the
decided to
petitioner's
move
agent.
forward anyway?
Exactly.
No,
So that was noted.
Mr.
I think
Heck?
they would prefer to move forward, and if the petition looks like it's not going to get a favorable outcome, I would imagine they would prefer a deferral so they can continue to work on it than a straight denial.
That's not how that works.
We have a substitute motion and a substitute motion, so those are the motions on the table, and they have to carry at this point in time.
So if we vote for the substitute motion and it passes, because that is a denial, not for approval that isn't done, is that then lock this parcel up for 2 years?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, there are some caveats to that 2-year prohibition. It could be a different project that comes forward. Council does have some discretion to look beyond that 2-year kind of halt on rezoning, but there are some nuances to that if they propose something different or come to a different type of project that's proposed, council may be able to consider that within that 2-year time period.
Ms. Ashmere?
Yes, thank you. So has petitioner, because now there is a motion to deny, I just want to give petitioner also an opportunity if they would like us to defer it.
That's not the.
We have
Have
a
they
motion.
requested deferral? Because I didn't see it in the deferral
Yeah,
list.
there wasn't a deferral requested. Yeah,
So
I
so
imagine
I'm
they.
assuming that then they would like us to proceed at this point.
And I would imagine they'd like us to proceed, yes, but I would also imagine if they had the opportunity to defer the petition, they would prefer to do that than take it.
I just recognize that we don't have another option for anything else besides the two motions that are on the table, unless the substitute motion is withdrawn, and I don't think that's going to happen. So we have a vote on the table.
So we have to proceed with the substitute motion.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I make one more comment?
Go ahead.
I would just say, while obviously district reps' comments weigh heavily on all of us, and they should, this is we can't get in this practice of having one email shot out and then all of a sudden we're trying to respond and react on the fly without any knowledge of the details. There's a certain weight when a council member in a district comes forth and asks to buck both staff and zoning committee's opinions. And I mean, I of course defer to a district rep normally, but there's a level of responsibility of calling all of us. If you're going to go against the entire system, you've got to whip the votes for that kind of stuff so we understand what's going on and what we're doing. I think this is a really bad precedent. And while I do hope to understand more about what the problem is so we can help, my gut tells me it's the broader infrastructure meeting and the broader macro topics that we talked about today that aren't going to be solved in the near term. So I have to vote against this substitute motion. I would hope that you guys will join us in setting the precedent that we have to do this in an organized fashion. We can't be behind the dais making these kind of decisions.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would like for us to consider, one, that this wasn't sent out last minute. It was sent out yesterday. We as council have a responsibility to talk to each other. If anyone had additional concerns, we could have picked up the phone as well and reached out. The whole purpose, as someone who served as a district representative for 8 years and who attended quite a few meetings in ETJ areas, it is part of our responsibility to make sure we're understanding what the expectation is. But for this conversation, there has been very few times in the 8 years prior that I served as a district rep that if I shared concerns with the developer or the petitioner, that the community had concerns, that petitioner would still move forward and say, you know what, I'm going to move forward with this, even though they are concerns, and not attempt to work towards addressing the concerns. We just had multiple conversations just earlier today regarding how we want to move forward. And I agree, the conversation shouldn't be held at the dais, but what we have the ability to do is either approve or deny. At the end of the day, that is council's responsibility. Just because a developer creates a product, that doesn't mean that that product is necessarily going to benefit our community. And we have seen just in the last 3 to 4 years the impact of some of our decisions on community. Now, there's clear concern that has been identified, and approving language for a development when we don't have the infrastructure in place. I am supporting my colleagues' request for denial because of, one, I am familiar with the area, but most importantly, as the district representative, she has been out speaking with the community, and she reached out to the petitioner. The petitioner chose to bring it to full council, for full council to then make a decision of approving or denying. At this point, as you stated earlier, Mayor Pro Tem, it is up for a vote. It is not my responsibility to try to create a win for the developer. We're either going to support the denial, which is my motion amended, or we revert back to the original vote.
Mr. Graham?
Quick question. In the consent items, could you outline the process for getting there? Was there anyone came at the hearing and spoke against this petition?
No. No, so this met all the criteria that we have. No opposition at the hearing, zoning committee recommendation for approval. No changes after zoning committee. It's a conventional petition, so there wouldn't have been any changes, and staff supporting the petition as well. So it did meet all 4 criteria to be on consent. And then, of course, we have the opportunity always to pull things off and discuss them as we are here.
And the zoning committee vote was?
7-0 on this one.
And staff recommends it as well?
Correct. Yeah, there were some discussions about infrastructure and the intersection with Sam Wilson Road and some of the challenges that may pose, but in the end, the discussion did move forward to a full recommendation from there.
Yeah, thank you. And again, Councilmember Mayfield referred to the meeting we had earlier today in reference to infrastructure, and I get it. I get that we're a growing city and that we are, there's impact in certain parts of our community. But if we're not growing, we're dying. And I'm a district rep, and there were some times where I wanted something and the council voted against it, and I I defer to the will of the council. I didn't take it personally, because I understand that everyone has different perspective. My perspective is to try to create controlled growth, to do it in a manner that is fair and equitable throughout this city, that we treat anyone that comes before us, developer, petitioners, the community, with respect and understanding. And again, we just got the email yesterday, and so obviously I just got it yesterday, and with no phone calls from her. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the discussion. All in favor of the substitute?
Ms. Molina has.
Ms. Molina?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think what's happening here from my perspective is that I think there's a complete miscommunication in how our process works. Because we have 7 districts with an immense amount of people, the district rep is assigned to talk to the people that they represent. And I think for a developer to put us in this position is unfair, because we haven't had the time to defer to the people with concerns. And so we depend on our colleagues to do that for us. And now we have a colleague from the dais who has told us that the people who voted her in have an issue with the petition that we now have. And so, this is a tough decision. And I don't like making tough decisions that are permanent infrastructure decisions without having had the opportunity to, do my own research, if you will. And so the only other measure we have at this point is to depend on what our colleague has done. And I think that's unfortunate, because what I would have liked to see in a situation like this is that we defer it until the council member is present. Because I think this would, first of all, be a whole lot easier if we had our representative here, because she could really articulate what conversation she's had with the community, and she can articulate that for the public as well. And so right now, we're going to have to take a vote without her words. I mean, we have her words through an email, but without specificity. So, like I said, for me, ideally, I would have liked to have had a vote like this one deferred until we could have more information from both her and even the developer who is involved in this project. But we do have a motion on the floor that we have to entertain. But this is not how we create policy, discussion. I just feel like this is, we've missed the ball for this particular one.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. If I am understanding properly, we have a substitute motion on the floor, and if that substitute motion fails, then we can go back to the original motion and defer this particular project?
No. So just, and Ms. Hagel-Gray, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The motion to deny the petition fails. We would go, if it passes, it carries. If it fails, we go back to the original motion. The original motion doesn't get 6 votes, then there's no action on it. And there's no action, there's no approval or denial.
And then you could move to defer.
Then you could move to defer.
That's what I was understanding, that we would have the opportunity to defer if we deny this substitute motion. That will provide ample time for all of us to become up to date with the issue, and our colleague can have additional conversations with us as well as the petitioner as it relates to the concerns of the constituents.
Thank you.
Is that?
I'll make a comment. I'm going to recognize myself to make a comment. I was just having a sidebar with some of my colleagues. Obviously, there's concerns around the dais, and there's some concerns about the way we're going about dealing with it, regardless of how we feel. It's just a matter of fact. So I would ask Ms. Johnson and Ms. Mayfield if they would consider pulling back their motions to deny, so I can make a motion to defer this, so we can touch base with Ms. Watlington. We can all have our one-on-one meetings if necessary, so we can do that. Would you be willing to entertain? It's a yes or no?
Let me clarify, you're attempting to introduce an amended motion to defer.
Yes, ma'am. That's,
So for clarification from our senior assistant attorney, in order to do an amended version to the deferral, do I need to withdraw or can I just accept the friendly amendment?
I don't think it would be an amendment because it actually is seeking an opposite result. So it would be cleaner if you withdraw, if you continue with the substitute motion to deny and that fails, then I believe you could also do a substitute motion before the vote on the original motion to defer.
So do I have the ability to amend my amended motion to deny to change it to a deferral, opposed to rescinding my motion?
Yes.
So Mayor Pro Tem, I would accept that friendly amendment, and I will amend for clarification. I will amend my motion to deny to a motion to defer.
It actually would be cleaner if you withdrew the motion.
Withdraw the denial.
we have to get Ms. Johnson to acknowledge that as well, since she was.
Johnson just seconded.
Thank you very much.
And then a motion to amend.
So we've withdrawn
I'll make a
the
substitute
and you
motion
put a new motion.
A new motion to defer.
A substitute motion to defer this to January 17th.
Yeah.
And it's been seconded by Ms. Johnson.
Thank you very much. Being that we've already had all of our discussion, all in favor of that motion to defer, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We will move on to item
Tracking well on time.
number 18, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because we had a withdrawal. Deferral.
Okay.
So item number 18, rezoning petition 2021-284 by Beacon Acquisitions LLC and Crescent Communities, located on approximately 146.9 acres, located on the west side of Ryan Road, south of Mount Holly Road, and north of Bellmead Drive in the ETJ in County Commission District 2, Ms. Leake's district, and closest to City Council District 3, Ms. Watlington's district. The current zoning is I-1, I-2 and R3, light industrial, general industrial, and conditional single-family residential in the Lower Lake Wiley protected area. And the proposed zoning is I-1CD, light industrial, Lower Lake Wiley protected area. The zoning committee voted 4-1 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff does recommend approval of this petition. Do I have a motion to approve the petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as it appears in our agendas and on the screen as the council's own?
Motion to defer.
I heard,
You don't get a second?
I heard a so moved.
Second. Yeah, second.
What are you seconding, Ms.?
I did a motion to defer. Same
We have a
reason.
motion to
Same
defer.
council member.
That has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion on the item?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Are you making a substitute?
No, just let them say whatever they're going to say.
Okay.
Do we have any?
That's so kind of you.
It's Christmas.
So, same reason, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Watlington did send us an email with neighborhood, which as representatives, we are supposed to be here to hear and represent our constituency. So there were concerns with this project as well, and based on the last petition, in order to be fair, and since you say it is Christmas and all, moving to defer to give an opportunity for the council representative to be here to speak as to what the community concerns were for 2022-284.
Any other comments?
I don't want to, but
Ms. Bakari and Ms.
Y'all have
Johnson.
to.
So what it feels like is happening right now is pretty much just turning down all the petitions. And that's okay. All I'm saying is, like, the person needs to be here for that. Like, this is serious stuff. And, like, it seems like people are being caught unaware. So I'm certainly caught unaware, but it seems like others in the community may be as well. So I don't know. I think we need to, I would make a substitute motion to approve it, but I don't know how that's going to go. So,
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, 284 should not come as a surprise to any of us. Ms. Watlington sent this email out, but she's been saying this all along. There's overwhelming opposition, community opposition to this petition, and Councilmember Watlington has tried to work with the developer, so the developer is moving forward. There should be no expectation of a rubber stamp from council. So she sent this out based on the last conversation. We said we wanted to defer to give her an opportunity to be here tonight. So we're just trying to be consistent. I mean, we can certainly proceed with the decision if council prefers, but that was why that motion was to defer.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will be supporting the deferment because I'd like to understand and be scrubbed in as it relates to the issues with the constituents for Councilmember Watlington. I would also like to just in addition state that we added this meeting to our annual calendar the week before Christmas, and some of us made changes and some of us could not make those modifications. So I certainly do not want to depict Councilmember Watlington as not being responsible for her constituents, having responsibilities and obligations that you've already made, void of a new meeting and unable to move those things around. So I will be supporting the deferment so we can have full information and the constituents' voices can be heard. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just hope that we're consistent, right? And that we're consistent because folks are watching what we're doing. And I'm a district rep now. I've been a district rep before. And I understand the influence that we have on zoning decisions. But again, it feels like just by listening over the last several weeks and months that this is more than just what's on our paper, right? It's about a broader conversation we just had earlier today about infrastructure. And I'll just say it again, if we're not, we should be responsive to our constituents. I want to be responsive to mine. There's several here tonight for a zoning petition in my district off of Baysford Road. So we should hear them. We should give them every consideration. But we also have to be balanced in our approach, and we never rubber stamp. I think that's not what we do around here. We don't rubber stamp. We make informed decisions. Thank you.
Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So we have 21 items that we're going through tonight. I want to remind council, part of our responsibility and our job is to do exactly what we're doing tonight. There should never be any expectation of any developer that just because you submit a project, that it is going to be rubber stamped by this council when there is opposition. So, to be clear, Councilmember Watlington did send an email to all of us. Overwhelming opposition by community who desires to retain both buffer and opportunity for mixed use at a key intersection in the area. Additional industrial in this area impacts property values, transportation, environmental safety, and overall quality of life. The residents in the immediate area are being inundated with industrial rezonings despite continued pleas to their representatives to provide balanced planning, equitability. We're going to just create that. So hopefully that's right. Across the city, eliminating the opportunity for the residents to participate in a meaningful way in the upcoming area plans. Our language through council has created areas. Those plans are sometimes inconsistent, yet they are approved by this council. They are sometimes inconsistent to the community needs. This council, our responsibility is a yay or nay and a deferral. If we are not going to do that job, if it is going to be an expectation that whatever you present to council should be rubber stamped, then that is a completely different conversation, and there is really no need. The planning commission could do that all on their own. So I challenge the idea that we're creating a hardship for a business to do business in our city. I also want us to recognize that, yes, we are one of the fastest growing cities in the nation, but if we don't take the time to not only ask the right questions, but make the right decisions, we're going to be running into challenges that a lot of other communities are running into because they just thought, just let them build whatever they want. We don't need the infrastructure challenges that some of our sister cities are having. We have a chance to do it a little different. I am supporting my colleague this time by being nice and asking for a deferral instead of a deny. But we need to remember what our responsibility and what our role is, and it is not my job to rubber stamp just because a developer came before me or my colleagues and said, hey, here's a project I want to do. We need to listen to the community and look at the impact of those choices that we're making. Thank you.
Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And the sentiments that my colleague, Ms. Mayfield, said, I think I completely identify with. And I want to make clear as a district, the leaders from that district call us, they tell us what they're experiencing. And although we live in the district, we can't live where they live. So that feedback is fundamental to our decision making. And so, you know, I think it's for anybody to seek to have a decision made in our city, I think it behooves you, if you're going to enter into that process, that you contact that district representative and allow that district representative and the strong ties that they've built to win election work on your behalf, because that district representative has that rapport by the people who trusted them to elect them. And so I also will be supporting a deferral because I trust my colleague that she's made the decision to reach out to the people who elected her to represent them, and they have an issue. And if they have an issue, then we all have an issue. And I think the deferral is actually being very kind to say that we're going to give both parties more time to articulate this to the broader council so that we can make a better and more informed decision.
Thank you very much. I'm going to make a substitute motion to adopt and approve the petition.
Second. Wait.
I've
Adopted for second.
I have a substitute motion that's been made and properly second.
Who seconded? I didn't hear.
Ms. Anderson seconded it.
Me approval.
Do you, all in favor of the substitute motion, please raise your hand.
To defer.
No,
No,
adopt
to
and
approve.
To adopt and approve.
He made a substitute motion to approve it.
Just got an
So the
M.
original
Night
motion was
Shyamalan twist there.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
All in favor of the substitute motion, please raise your hand.
To defer.
I'm sorry.
To vote
So
for
hold
it.
on.
To adopt it.
Can you
The
please?
substitute motion is to adopt and approve the petition.
Okay. And the original motion was the
Was the
deferral.
Yes. Yes, so all in favor of the substitute motion, please raise your hand.
One. You have to
To
vote.
approve it?
1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed to that?
To approve?
Well, that motion did not carry. It's 4 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Consistent. We done the
Yeah.
first one.
So,
We will move to the original motion, which is to defer the petition. All in favor of deferral, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much.
How to do business, though.
If you will now, please turn off your televisions, everyone at home watching. Thank you.
We move on to agenda number 19, rezoning petition 2022-024 by Moflehi Bowman LLC for approximately 5.37 acres located on the northwest intersection of Reams Road and Pressbury Boulevard, south of W.T. Harris Boulevard in Council District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. The current zoning is R3 single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is R8 multifamily residential conditional. The zoning committee voted 7-0 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff recommends approval of this petition. Is there a motion to approve this petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as it appears in our agendas and on the screen as the council's own.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to adopt and approve.
Yes, adopt and approve.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item number 20, rezoning petition 2022-047 by Joseph Leland for approximately .28 acres located on the west side of Eastway Drive, south of Arnold Drive, and north of Central Avenue in Council District 1, Ms. Anderson's district. The current zoning is R4 single-family residential. Proposed zoning is O2 office conditional. The zoning committee voted 7-0 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff recommends approval of this petition. Is there a motion to approve the petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as it appears in our agendas and on the screen as the council's own?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the petition, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. We'll move on to item number 21, rezoning petition 2022-050 by Ascent Real Estate Capital LLC. This petition does have changes after the zoning committee vote, so we will need a vote on whether or not to send that back. Well, first we'll go through the information. This petition is located on approximately 2.94 acres located on the northeast intersection of Long Avenue and Connection Point Boulevard, west of Independence Boulevard in Council District 5, Ms. Molina's district. The current zoning is MUD O, mixed use development optional, and the proposed zoning is MUD CD, mixed use development conditional. The zoning committee voted 5-0 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff does recommend approval of this petition. Mr. Pettin, would you please give us an overview on the changes?
Yeah, sure. The change was a fairly minor one. There's a road on the backside of the project between their site and some parcels that front Independence Boulevard. You can see that kind of in green on the back. They changed the petition or site plan, to show some potential access points to that private street in coordination with some of those adjacent property owners. So minor change. Staff doesn't feel it needs to go back to zoning committee, but we'll leave that to y'all's discretion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion that the changes should not go back to zoning committee?
Motion to accept and not send back to zoning.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we must have a 3/4 votes to pass this one. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. To not send back. Any vote to deny? Ms. Mayfield?
Yeah, 3/4.
All right, so it's no? We just want to record the votes. In support? All right, that vote is unanimous. Thank you. Now, may I have a motion? If there's a motion to approve the petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as it appears in our agendas
Motion
and on
to
the screen?
adopt and approve.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion of the motion? Petition? Is hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 22, rezoning petition 2022-051 by Joseph Boyapati for approximately 4.98 acres located on the south side of Sam Neely Road, west of Steel Creek Road, and east of Chrisland Woods Place in Council District 3, Ms. Watlington's district. The current zoning is R3, single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is R8 CD, single-family residential conditional. The zoning committee voted 5-0 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff recommends approval of this petition. Is there a motion to approve this petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as it appears in our agendas and on the screen as the council's own?
So moved.
Second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Ms. Johnson?
Yeah, I just want to state for the record, because it was said earlier that there was some type of blanket attempt by the council member. This is the same email from council member Watlington. Item 22051, approved, outstanding community issues addressed in permitting. So the district representative does support this petition,
and I will be supporting that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to adopt and approve, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Move on to item number 23. This item number, rezoning petition 2022-057 by Madam E. Holmes, does have changes after the zoning committee. This is located on approximately 21.5 acres on the west side of Old Plank Road, east of Brookshire Boulevard, and west of Dale Avenue in Council District 2, Mr. Graham's district. The current zoning is R4 single-family residential and I1 light industrial. The proposed zoning is R8 MF multifamily residential conditional. The zoning committee voted 7-0 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation. There are changes, like I said, that came after the zoning committee's vote. Mr. Pettin, could you please tell us about those?
Sure, there were two of those. They had to do with transportation improvements and the timing of those improvements. The first note that was modified was prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy, the petitioner shall provide the proposed internal road network up to intermediate course and install curb, gutter, and storm pipe drains. And then the other modified note was the petitioner shall ensure that all off-site transportation improvements, specifically turn lane and Old Plank Road frontage streetscape improvements, are substantially completed prior to the issuance of the site's 25th building certificate of occupancy. So just again, timing of those road improvements and how they relate to COs for the project. Minor modifications. Staff does not believe that they warrant any additional review by the zoning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion that the changes should not go back to the zoning committee?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Do we have a motion that's been made and properly second? Do we have any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion to not send back to the zoning committee, please raise your hand. That motion carries. Is there a motion to approve this petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as it appears in our agendas and on the screen as the council's own?
So moved.
Second. There's a motion that's been made and properly second. Do you have any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Any against? Ms. Mayfield is in denial. That motion passes 8-1. Thank you. Item number 24, rezoning petition 2022-162 by Dream Key Partners Incorporated. There are also changes after the zoning committee's vote. On this one, the rezoning petition this is located on approximately 7.23 acres located on the west side of Weddington Road, north of Walker Road, and south of McKee Road in Council District 7, Mr. Driggs District. The current zoning is R12 MF multifamily residential conditional, and the proposed zoning is R17 MF multifamily residential conditional. The zoning committee voted 6-1 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff recommends approval of this petition. Mr. Pettin, could you please tell us about the changes after the zoning committee's decision?
Sure. There was one change. It has to do with construction of some off-site sidewalk to complete a sidewalk gap between this property and with the intersection of Fincher Farm Road to the north. Essentially, the note reads that the petitioner shall make good faith efforts to enter into an agreement with the City of Charlotte, which would include the following material terms. 1, petitioner will construct an off-site sidewalk from the site to Fincher Farms. 2, the city will agree to pay for all costs associated with construction of the sidewalk, including but not limited to construction, easements, utilities, design, and/or similar, through reimbursement of the petitioner or other financial mechanism agreed upon by the petitioner and the city. And then 3, within 6 months of the approval of this rezoning, the city will demonstrate that funding is available and earmarked for reimbursement to the petitioner for the sidewalk costs. And in the event the city is unable to demonstrate the availability of funding within that time, the petitioner shall not have any obligation to construct the off-site sidewalk. And is also noted that it's understood the off-site sidewalk construction and completion shall not delay or prevent the petitioner's plan approval or certificate of occupancies.
Move not send back.
Second. We have a motion that's been made and properly second to not send back. Any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all in favor of not send back, please raise your hand. That is unanimous.
To adopt and approve.
Second.
Thank you. There's been a motion to approve the petition and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency as it appears in our agendas and on the screen as council's own. Do we have any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much, and that completes the decision portion of our agenda. We will now move on to public hearings portion. Set up real quick. Item number 32 is our first hearing of the evening. This is rezoning petition 2021-237 by Ballo Properties LLC on approximately 2.08 acres located on the east side of Providence Road, north of South Sharon Amity Road, and south of Andover Road in Council District 6, Mr. Bakari's district. The current zoning is R3 Single Family Residential, and proposed zoning is Urban Residential Conditional. Staff does not recommend approval of this petition in its current form, so after staff's presentation, the petitioner will have 10 minutes. Mr. Pettin.
All right, thank you. 2021-237, it's just over 2 acres on Providence Road, just to the east of Providence, north of South Sharon Amity Road and south of Andover Road. It is currently zoned, as mentioned, R3. Proposed zoning is UR2 conditional, and the adopted place type from the policy map does recommend neighborhood 1. The proposal is for up to 20 single-family attached townhome dwellings in 4 buildings. That comes out about 9.6 units per acre. Does limit building height to 40 feet. Also provides a 75-foot front setback along Providence Road, where the tree save then would be located in front of those buildings. Does include architectural standards in regards to exterior materials, roof design, blank walls, et cetera, as well as garage setback requirements. Also provides a minimum of 2 parallel guest parking spaces along the private alley. Incorporates a 6-foot-tall brick wall with masonry columns along the rear property line. And also has 20-foot Class C buffer adjacent to the parcel's northeast. That would have a minimum of 75% evergreen tree plantings. And also would have access from 1 private alley off Providence Road. Also discusses that the petitioner may coordinate with the adjacent development to the south, which is was approved under rezoning 2021-104 to provide a possible internal connection if desired by the adjacent developer. You can see that just off to the right of this plan where it says grayed out and says approved. And also constructs an 8-foot planting strip and 12-foot multi-use path along Providence Road and proposes a southbound leftover on Providence at the site's access point. As mentioned, staff does not recommend approval of this petition in its current form. We would like to continue to see some revisions to the side yards and dumpster location for us to continue to evaluate our recommendation. As mentioned, it is inconsistent also with the policy map recommendation for neighborhood 1. We'll be happy to take any questions that you may have following the petitioner's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pettin. Mr. Brown.
Good evening, council members. Colin Brown on behalf of the petitioner, Blow Properties. Andrew Blow is here with us tonight. Thanks, Dave.
Excuse me 1 second, I'm sorry. He has 10 minutes. It says 3 on the timer.
Thanks, Dave, for that presentation. I'll try to, I know it's the holiday, so I'll try to move through quickly. I think Dave has done a nice job. The goal here is to find some of that missing middle housing. Providence Road corridor, certainly a desirable area to live. Dave's right about the townhome concept. We started out this petition at 24 units. We are now down to 20 units, and we believe we can address staff's outstanding issues with regard to the side yard and dumpster location. So we will be submitting a revised plan following this hearing. We hope that addresses staff's concerns and that we're able to gain their support. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Move to close.
Second.
We have a motion that's been made and properly seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. And just for those that are watching or maybe their first time, if you recognize there are some council members that are not at the dais, their vote sticks, the quorum sticks once they have left, and they are recorded as an automatic yes vote. So we'll move on to item number 33. rezoning petition 2022-027 by Childress Klein for approximately 2.27 acres located on the east side of Sharon Road, west of Colony Road, and north of Fairview Road in Council District 6, Mr. Bakara's district. The current zoning is MUD O, mixed-use development optional, and the proposed zoning is MUD O SPA, mixed-use development optional with a site plan amendment. Staff does not recommend approval of this petition in its current form. So after staff's presentation, Ms. Grant, you and your group will have 10 minutes to present. Mr. Pettin.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2022-027 is approximately 2.27 acres located along the east side of Sharon Road, just across from South Park Mall. It is currently zoned MUD O, and the petitioner is requesting a site plan amendment to the originally entitled MUD O that was granted, not sure, several years ago. The policy map does recommend a regional activity center place type for this property. The proposal, there's lots on here. I'm not going to read these verbatim. They are included also in your staff analyses, but some of the main items are for the request increases the maximum building height from the entitled 75 feet to 225 feet. Does increase maximum building square footage from 105,000 square feet with up to 20,000 square feet of retail EDE uses to the following. So we can go up to now 250,000 square feet with up to 20,000 square feet of commercial EDE. Medical office, if provided, would be limited to 30,000 square feet with a maximum of 150,000 general office. Doesn't increase the setback along Sharon Road to 20 feet and include an 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk. That goes to a 22-foot setback from that original 20. And now we have an 8-foot planting strip and 14-foot sidewalk. So again, an increase to the sidewalk width from 6 to 14 and the setback from 20 to 22. Does add some optional provisions to allow maximum building height again up to 225. Also parking between the building and street until redevelopment of the site occurs. That's an existing condition. They're looking to just get some confirmation for that to remain. Also that the streetscape would remain until redevelopment of the site occurs as well. Did add some access from Element Way and Coltmore Lane. Does some improvements to the signalized driveway on Sharon Road. And it also extends Coltmore through the site to Sharon. Relocates existing crosswalk at the intersection of South Park. Does commit to a TTM for some transportation analysis on Sharon Road and South Park Drive signal. There are some provisions and commitments to the loop trail for South Park that are either construction outcomes or monetary outcomes for that, and also does maintain some of the optional provisions to allow for a drive-through with a bank branch, as well as an expansion of no more than 2,500 square feet until redevelopment occurs. Again, there's architectural details built into it, so it's a pretty exhaustive list that we have on the slide here, but again, that's all wrapped in your staff analysis as well. As mentioned, staff does not recommend approval of the petition in its current form. The main concerns for staff is that we would like some additional resolution on the request for additional height. Typically, when we see that, we also get some commitments for additional open space or LEED certification for a building, things of that nature that really kind of provide a little bit more beneficial outcome for the project to help to offset that height request. Conversations we have with the petitioner leading up to the hearing, we feel very confident that those are essentially addressed in email, but we'd like to see them addressed in the plan submittal following this hearing later this week. So I have full confidence that those will be resolved, but because the petition doesn't include them at this juncture, that's why staff's recommendation is the way it is. But again, feel fully confident those will be resolved. It is consistent with the policy map recommendation for Regional Activity Center, and we'll be happy to take questions following the petitioner's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Bridget Grant, I assume you'll be splitting the time for David Haggard and Chris Thomas. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
That's correct. Happy holidays. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. Bridget Grant. I'm working on this petition with my colleague, Jeff Brown. We're pleased to be representing David Haggart and Childress Klein on this rezoning. As Dave mentioned, it was originally rezoned in 2010, and much of the site plan amendments that we're seeking are just in keeping with some of the changes that we've seen in South Park, but also surrounding our site that's caused us to have to look at some of the access and edge treatments. As Dave mentioned, based on our current submittal, staff doesn't support, but we've been working hard over the past few weeks to get some points put in that we believe will address and justify and provide the benefits for the additional height. So if we do go above 120 feet, we'll be constructing a portion of the loop trail on an adjacent parcel that's already included in our rezoning. The building will be high-performance construction Tier 1 basic lead. 3% of our parking spaces will be EV installed, and an additional 7% of the parking spaces will be EV capable. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very
Move to
much.
close?
Second.
We have a motion to close the public hearing that's been seconded. Do we have any questions or comment, discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We move on to item number 34, rezoning petition 2022-033 by TMBTR of the Carolinas LLC for approximately 48.49 acres located on the south side of Alexandriana Road, the east side of North Lake Center Parkway, north of Interstate 485, is in the ETJ, in County Commission District 1, Ms. Powell's district, and is closest to Council District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. The current zoning is R3, single-family residential and business park. The proposed zoning is MX2, mixed-use district innovative. Staff recommends approval of this petition. We do have community opposition to this, so after Mr. Pettin's presentation, the petitioner will have 10 minutes to present.
Okay, thank you. 2022-033 is approximately 48.49 acres located on the south side of Alexandriana Road. It's just north there of I-485 and North Lake Mall. The current zoning is a split zone. We've got R3 and BP, which is a business park zoning, one of our older business and commercial zoning districts. The adopted place type does recommend neighborhood 2 for a portion of the site, as well as neighborhood 1 for a portion of the site. This project is proposing up to 353 detached and/or attached dwelling units. We do have some innovative standards programmed into this project. It does limit the number of units to 4 per building. Those innovative standards include that no internal private streets would have public access easements. No minimum, lot size or width would be provided or required, Individual units also would not be required to have frontage on public or private streets. All units will be within 400 feet of a public or private street, and then reduce setback along those private streets from 14 feet from back of curb. So again, those are all the innovative standards being proposed. Does also provide some transportation improvements through construction of a westbound approach of Access B, which is there on North Lake Center Parkway. That would have 1 ingress and 1 egress lane, as well as an internal protected stem of 100 feet. Does also construct an eastbound right turn lane, along Alexandriana Road with a minimum of 100 feet of storage. Does construct a westbound left turn lane along Alexandriana Road with a minimum of 100 feet of storage as well. And then a northbound approach of Access C, which is also, you can see there on Alexandriana Road, that would also have 1 ingress and 1 egress lane with 100 feet of storage. Does provide a 12-foot multi-use path, an 8-foot planting strip on Alexandriana Road, and then an 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk on North Lake Center Parkway, and then 8-foot sidewalk and 8-foot planting strip along internal private street connections. 10% of the site would be used for common open space at minimum. Does dedicate greenway easement to Mecklenburg County, which would include a minimum of the 100-foot stormwater management buffer of Dixon Branch, and then also architectural standards are included within the petition as well. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. There are no outstanding issues to be resolved at this time. The petition is both consistent with a portion for neighborhood 2, but inconsistent with the neighborhood 1 place type recommendation. But again, staff does feel it is an appropriate project in this location, and we are recommending approval. We'll be happy to take questions following presentations by the petitioner and the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have several speakers for Colin Brown, Brittany Lenz, Megan Ledbetter, Skylar White, and Matt Mendel. Mr. Brown, I assume you'll be portioning up the 10 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mayor Pro Tem, council members, zoning committee members, Colin Brown on behalf of the petitioner. Thanks, Dave, for his good overview. Megan Ledbetter from Taylor Morrison is here if you have questions. But as Dave said, staff is supportive. If you can see this map, I know there's been a lot of talk about infrastructure. This is actually an area that has infrastructure and is close to all the goods and services and jobs around. So we're obviously at 77 and 485, almost. If you can see, there's the North Lake Mall campus, Super Walmart, North Mecklenburg High School, plenty of employment in this area, so just a great location to provide some much needed housing in the area. 50-acre site is a large assemblage. If you'll note from the zoning map, we have multifamily zoning to our west and our east. The 2040 map does call for N2, which is high density, on a portion of the site. N1, we think this is a fairly low density proposal at just over 7 units per acre. So we think that is a good fit for the area. There's a look at it in context. I hope you'll find that fitting. Taylor Morrison, this is something different to the market. It will compete with your traditional garden apartments, but it is a townhome style living. So folks would have their own yard, be able to walk to their door. So it's really kind of an innovative housing option. It's not competing with single family. It's really geared to compete with multifamily. When Megan talks about it, she says their market goes after the dumbbells in the market, kind of empty nesters, maybe folks that have into the dumbbells as the kind of demographic bell curve, and really looking at folks that have maybe lived in an apartment. They don't want to maintain a yard on their own. They like to have a yard. So this is something this brings into the market. Happy to have staff support. I know there is a speaker in opposition at our community meeting. The only representative was from the apartment community next door. I've reached out but have not gotten communication for the opposition, so I will let them speak, and then I'll do my best to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zachary, unless anybody else from the team wants to use any of the 8 minutes, I don't see anybody coming up. Zachary Moritz, you have 10 minutes as well when you make yourself available at the lectern.
Thank you, members of the council, Mayor Pro Tem. Appreciate you hearing me this afternoon. Appreciate all your hard work today, especially during the holiday season. God bless y'all for the long days y'all are putting in for this stuff. We appreciate it. Again, I'm an attorney here in town. I've been practicing commercial real estate law for 23 years here in town. I represent Eaton Advanced Management, which is the owner of one of an apartment complex that's next door. Don't want to hide that fact. They don't have any problem renting their apartments. I think all the apartments in these areas stay very well rented, but they do oppose this project because they think it's a bad project for this area. This project kind of has the worst of both worlds. It's not dense enough to really take advantage of all the infrastructure that you have here, which certainly it is, close to interstates and employment, but it's also too dense for what it is. It's all rentals. So this is basically low-density rentals. It's all small rental houses. That's a concept whose we feel is yesterday's news. The fact is there are no affordable housing units in this project at all. There's no mixed uses. There's nothing to serve the neighborhood or the units that are already there. So just some recent headlines that y'all are well aware of. Charlotte empties out housing trust fund to assist developers to build affordable housing. Again, we have apartments here, but no affordable housing at all. Many of you pointed out at that meeting that we don't have enough affordable single-family housing. A lot of that, millions of dollars that y'all spent, went to rentals. You know as well as I do, rentals go in boom and bust cycles. We've been through a boom cycle of approving thousands and thousands of multifamily units. What happens at the end of a boom cycle, we all know, and I think we're at that point. One of you said these projects are not enough to move the needle. Well, here you're just doing another project that's rentals only with no affordable component at all and no retail or community services at all to serve the neighborhood. Another headline, A Charlotte starter home is about $300,000 right now. Affordable housing is sorely lacking. Only 3.8% of our houses now available in the market are considered affordable in this market. Finally, another final headline: Congress can tame inflation by boosting housing supply. The reason prices are so high right now is because we have a lack of affordable housing that people can own and live in as opposed to rent. A lot of the good parcels are going up for rentals rather than single family. Right now, you have about 1,500 multifamily units in this area within a quarter mile. There's very little that's walkable here, none that they can walk, folks in those areas can walk to. They've got to get in the car to drive to North Lake Mall or other places. What you have scheduled here in your land use plan is Neighborhood 1 and Neighborhood 2. Staff has specifically told you, and Mr. Brown stated, this is totally incompatible with the Neighborhood 1 section. Even the Neighborhood 2 section is not really compatible with your land use plan. You don't have any mixtures of uses. You don't have any mixtures of housing types here. They're all just straight single-family units, one, maybe two-story. You don't have any variety of housing types. You don't have anything to serve those residents in those housing types. So they're all going to be getting in their car to drive every morning, every afternoon. The amenities that are provided for in this project are also cursory, in our opinion. If you look at what you have here, you have some wetlands, you have a pipeline easement, a creek. None of those areas are developable anyway, so the developer is stating that they're proposing some greenways and things like that, but they can't develop those areas anyway. So anybody that develops this project or property is going to be giving you those amenities anyway. They're just arguing that they're giving amenities for areas that can't be developed anyway. The improvements to Alexandriana Road is a 2-lane road, very busy road, backs up in traffic right now. And they're providing some turn lanes, but no real improvements for that. So we think traffic is only going to be exacerbated by a project like this. This project is a project whose time has come and gone. The proposal that's in a transitional use between multifamily that's nearby is really kind of a way of saying it's sort of a project designed by a committee. It's not a quality project that takes a really good piece of land that's got good access and uses it for something that can really move the needle and be a quality project. A quality project that's mixed use, has an affordable component, can be built here without any rezoning at all. You need something that's well thought out, that addresses this area and Charlotte's immediate needs now, not a couple of years ago when everybody was proposing all these rental houses, and this is now just coming up before y'all. And you can do that and still be consistent with your plan. Remember, once you approve a project, you've lost the opportunity to move the needle for this particular piece of land. It's going to be done once it's approved. It could be something great, and you can still stick with your plan for Neighborhood 1 and Neighborhood 2. Mixed use with a strong affordable housing component. Project that's not just more of the same, but actually does move the needle. And we'd encourage you to deny this request on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moretz. Mr. Brown, you have a 2-minute rebuttal.
Thanks to Zach, who I've known for a while. It's a tough job to represent an apartment community and come in and oppose multifamily housing across the street. So if this is, so the note on that is national landlord opposes new housing in competition. So if our goal is to keep driving up housing prices, certainly heed those words. To the point about affordability, I think we all agree with that. It is very difficult to bring new affordable units online. I think that property owner has probably a much lower basis in the land, and we'd certainly love for them to provide some affordable units in the area. As far as units in the area, certainly this is a multifamily area. As I mentioned in my presentation, we think this is, terrifically located. This is a medium-density project at only 7.25 dwelling units per acre. This is not an eye-popping number. If I could have my slides, and I'll even show. Again, infrastructure in place. We're on 4-lane frontage, walking distance to employment, probably within a mile to schools, employment, and strong retail. To give you a look, here's the property on the right. Mr. Moretz's client, the apartments are on the left-hand side of the screen. So this is a place, you know, and I hear you guys, sometimes we're doing these on 2-lane roads, but these are, you know, 5-lane sections, median installed. Alexandriana can use some work, but here at the intersection, this is certainly a location that I think is a very good fit for this. And I think this product type is something new in the market. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a question, actually for Mr. Moretz, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you for the presentation. I'd like to address what Mr. Brown said, and I want to clarify your position today. Are you representing the apartments across the street?
Yes.
Are you here as a resident?
No,
Okay.
no, they hired me to be here. I'm full disclosure, yes. But that doesn't change the facts of, I think, what I said, that, you know, this site can be something great, and
Right.
this is not it.
Right. Are the apartments that you represent, are those affordable housing or below market rate?
I do not, they've been there for a while, and I don't know what the statistics are on that. I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't any, you know. There should be. I believe there should be, but I do not know the answer to that.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the, you know, the position or the.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, you have a question for Mr.? Okay.
Melina?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Actually, you could stay right there. I got another question to follow up.
Right.
If you don't mind. So I like to, when I have someone in opposition of something saying that they don't like it, I would like to see what they feel like is the right decision to be made.
Right.
So what do the people that you're representing then feel like should be there?
They think it would
They
be,
recommend that?
I'm sorry, neighborhood, mixed use and neighborhood retail, I think, to serve all the, again, you have probably 1,500 apartments immediately adjacent. You've already approved some just to the right there, Autumn Field Drive. Those are 300 and something that are being built now. Just on the other side of 45, you've got 300 more being built. And I guess I could use the pointer, couldn't I? You've got 600 across the street. Part of those are my clients, but another part is somebody else's. There's a bunch of apartments out here. And so you could, you know, we think it could be best used for, you know, neighborhood retail, but have an affordable housing component that you're not requiring, but you're getting a lot of proposals for that in a lot of other projects, because we need it. But this doesn't have any, which kind of stood out to us.
So you're saying that the residents that you represent then would like to see more economic development as opposed to more housing? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I think that would be accurate, yes. I don't think, I would argue with Mr. Brown as far as can you walk to anything here? I don't think there's anything walkable. You take your life in your hands walking to North Lake Mall. On those roads are, you know, highly trafficked, and Alexandriana, 2 lanes. So it's real tight in rush hour, but there's really nothing you can walk to here to serve all these residents, which means whatever goes here, you know, we putting a lot of cars on the street, people driving to the grocery store and stuff. So, and you call for mixed use, both in neighborhood 1 and neighborhood 2 calls for not, you know, a variety of housing types, which you do not have here. It's just all these little square rentals. 2, it calls for retail and other civic uses that will serve those housing types, which you also don't have here at all. So you can stick with your plan and still get all that stuff. So they're asking you to change your plan. And we think, our argument would be the plan that you have can be consistent, you can do a project consistent with that and make a great project without having to make a change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have, I do.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. This question is for city staff, and this kind of goes in line with what we were talking about earlier today. I'm familiar with quite a bit of development in this area, Mr. Patton, and I wanted to know if there is a map or something in the petition that would help us to take a look at the pending development in that area. I thought I'd seen a graph. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we looking at just the 2020-150 and the 2020-010? I see that. But I thought there was a bit more development in close proximity to this petition. So those are the kind of things, and you can give that information to me offline, but I'd like to see the other developments surrounding this along with traffic and traffic counts. And that's just the kind of information that helps us envision how this petition fits in the, the holistic or the comprehensive impact in that
certainly.
area.
Yeah, there have been quite a few rezonings off North Lake Parkway for townhomes, apartments. We did have the auto dealership there. That was, I think, 2022-010 that was shown. The other petition that showed up in the staff report was apartments as well. And then we had some further to the south. But yeah, I'll be happy to send you a list over of the activity we've had in that area over the last 5 years. And we have some pending petitions infilling in and a little bit closer to North Lake Mall itself. So there's quite a bit of activity in the area, but yeah, we'll be happy to send that along to you.
Right. And so that's the kind of information that I would like as the council rep, as far as how this fits in. There is quite a bit of multifamily, so that helps.
Yeah, no problem. We can get that over to you.
Thank you.
There are no other comments?
Motion to close.
Second, the motion to close public hearing has been seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 35. Item number 35, rezoning petition 2022-058 by Baldwin SRE-A LLC, Hampstead SCSRE LLC, and Baldwin SRE-C LLC for approximately 3.4 acres bound by the south side of Baldwin Avenue on the west side of East 4th Street and on the east side of East 3rd Street north of Queens Road in Council District 1, Miss Anderson's district. The current zoning is MUD O, mixed use development optional, and the proposed zoning is MUD O SPA, mixed use development with optional with a site plan amendment. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon the resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation and technical revisions related to site and building design. There is no opposition, so after, hold on.
We did have a speaker sign up in person.
Okay, so there is opposition to this petition. So after staff's presentation, Mr. Brown, you will have 10 minutes. Mr. Patton.
All right, thank you. 2022-058, it's 3.4 acres. As mentioned, it's along 3rd Street, Baldwin Avenue, East 4th Street. It is currently zoned MUD O through a rezoning that occurred back in 2017. And the proposed zoning is to do a site plan amendment for that previously approved MUD optional plan. It's a community activity center recommended on the policy map. It does say on the slide neighborhood 1. Apologize for that. It was probably a carryover from a previous slide, but it is, as you can see, community activity center along that property there. So the proposal for the site plan amendment really focuses on one component, which is a intersection improvement, which, getting into the details, does provide or does note to restrict left and through movements from Baldwin Avenue. Does maintain the existing right turn in and out with those restrictions on Baldwin Avenue with the intent to limit through vehicle traffic from the planned development into the neighborhood via Baldwin Avenue. So again, that left and through movements are really intended to limit some of that through vehicle traffic from the project. Does also incorporate a bike signal and lane to allow through bicycle connectivity on Baldwin Ave across 3rd Street. Does also provide coordination between NCDOT, as 3rd Street is an NCDOT maintained road, as well as CDOT. That was all conducted in collaboration to ensure a safe and functional intersection design and signal operation between those two entities. And the resulting design is a significant alteration to the operation, access, and traffic patterns of the project's existing transportation requirements, and does reflect a substantive change to the approved site plan and overall transportation commitments. To get into the details of those transportation improvements and how they came about and what they mean for the project, CDOT staff is on hand. I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Again, that's the only aspect of this project and petition that is changing. These intersection improvements weren't called out in this fashion on the original plan. When we get into permitting for something like this, staff does need those notes and commitments to really match up to what the outcomes are. Otherwise, we could get into a situation where the petitioner says, look, I didn't agree to these on paper, so we don't want to necessarily do everything as being requested. So as staff worked through at CDOT and NCDOT and the community as well to get this outcome, the notes on the plan then need to match what that desired outcome is, so there's some accountability for that in the permitting process. So that's, again, really the only aspect of this original rezoning from 2017 that is changing. None of the other entitlement requests have changed. None of the other development standards or commitments have changed. It's just this aspect of transportation improvement that is being proposed through the site plan amendment. So, again, staff does recommend approval. We do have just some minor outstanding issues on tech revisions that we need to get cleaned up. One of those is related to an additional request beyond just the standard 2 years vesting. Some of those original notes that were approved back in 2017 for 5 years were carried over. Those have been committed to be taken off, but that is an outstanding issue for us to just get that addressed. It is consistent with the Community Activity Center. All the uses and what we'd like to see from a project are consistent with that outcome. It is inconsistent with the building height that could be allowed in Activity Center, but again, just wanted to call out overall it is consistent with the desired uses and outcomes. That height is just different than what would be potentially allowed under that Community Activity Center place type. So with that, staff will recommend approval, like I said, upon resolution of issues, and we'll take any questions you may have following presentations by the petitioner and members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brown, you have 10 minutes.
Mayor Pro Tem Colin Brown on behalf of the petitioner. And to reiterate it, and I don't want to sound like beating a dead horse, but I think it's important to repeat, as Dave mentioned, no changes really to this rezoning. Some of you may recall this was a fairly contentious rezoning probably 5 years or so ago, but no changes to that zoning. When this zoning was approved, this is the subject property here, our approved traffic improvements would allow someone to go straight across Baldwin into the Cherry neighborhood and drive through the Cherry neighborhood. It would also allow a left turn so you could travel down Providence towards the Myers Park area, which frankly our team really likes. That's a lot of movement, that's more access to the site. We find that very positive. We worked very hard through the rezoning process to have that allowed. Since this rezoning was approved, CDOT and neighborhood leadership in Cherry has spent a lot of time and are very concerned about the traffic impacts of the approved design. So CDOT and the neighborhood worked together and came up with an alternate design, which is on the screen, which frankly we don't really like. On Baldwin, there would be, you could now not take a left and go to Myers Park, which would be very convenient for our users, and you cannot go straight across to Cherry. But after kind of going back and forth with CDOT a good bit, CDOT said, hey, this is really the direction we want to move, so we've agreed to that. So essentially, all this rezoning is doing is incorporating into the zoning plan the transportation improvements and frankly limitations that I think the neighborhood wanted. So essentially we said, okay, no changes. There was in our original zoning, it did have a 5-year vested right because it did. We've taken that out of this one. So we're not getting to one up another 5 years. So that is the extent. I just wanted to make sure that was very clear because I know there had been heartburn with the original rezoning, nothing changing there. The only thing changing is incorporating the transportation improvements that I believe the neighborhood is in support of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Barbara Rainey, you'll have 10 minutes once you make your way down to the lectern. Yes, ma'am. Well, you can go to this one right here if you wish.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Rainey, and I'm here on behalf of the Cherry Community Organization in opposition, in part, to this rezoning petition. I want to start by saying that we support the reason for the site plan amendment to change the traffic pattern that would have brought more traffic into the Cherry community, directly in front of our neighborhood park and one of our affordable family housing sites, the Oaks at Cherry. We thank CDOT and Mr. Ed McKinney for working with us over the last 2 years to find a solution that will really address our concerns about the health and safety of residents in Cherry. That being said, we still have some concerns about this development on this site. We disagree with the staff analysis and statement of consistency. As we said in 2017, the building was inconsistent with the place types being proposed at that time. We now see that the proposed building is still inconsistent with the recently adopted policy map place types. The adopted Community Activity Center, CAC, place type recommends 5 to 7 stories, up to 81 feet in height, and low to mid-rise building. But this building would allow for up to 27 stories, 299 feet in height, a high-rise building. Since the staff analysis addresses more than just the traffic pattern changes in the consistency statement, we felt that it was important for us to address the significant inconsistencies with this petition and the recently adopted Comp 2040 policy map and CAC place type. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, you have 2 minutes for a rebuttal.
I don't know that I have much to rebut on that. I'm not kind of getting in the weeds, and doesn't matter to me if staff takes no position on the policy. Again, we're bringing this forward to amend the transportation. I do think the neighbors want that, so we're fine moving that forward if that is the change that they would like.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we, David, have staff address the inconsistencies that Ms. Rainey just spoke to?
Certainly, yeah. As we mentioned, the uses are consistent with an activity center, with the mixed-use building, with some different design standards and outcomes are consistent, again, with that place type as far as uses go. The building height that, again, was entitled back in 2017 before we had our policy map would be inconsistent generally with the community activity center place type. But again, we're not getting into the, I guess staff didn't wade in much to that conversation because that's not an aspect of the project that's looking to be changed. That was entitled 5 years ago. It was inconsistent at that time. We're just simply calling out that the uses are consistent, but the height that would be allowed that was already approved is just still a matter of an inconsistent aspect of the project overall.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
You done, Ms. Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to recognize myself real quick, just to give, a little bit of background. I think only Mr. Bakari, Ms. Edgemere, and myself were on council when this petition first came through. That, at least folks that are here right now. It was very contentious, and I think ultimately we got to a pretty good place. I think it was the tallest building outside of the 277 loop that was approved at that point in time. At least going that, that direction, not towards the south end. But it took a lot of back and forth, and ultimately, I think it was one of those situations where it was true compromise. Nobody got exactly everything that they wanted. But one of the things that got, if I'm remembering correctly, that got the Cherry community there were some of the transportation improvements, the safety improvements that were agreed to. And even then, they didn't get everything that they wanted. And I'm kind of thinking that this access to Baldwin was one of those things that they really did want challenge to prevent the hotel or high-rise traffic going through the Cherry community. So I guess I do have a question for Ms. Rainey and the Cherry community organization. Why would we not want the increased protections for Cherry to be codified onto the plan? Because that's what I understand that this rezoning is asking to do. Not approving this rezoning would not disallow the building to be built. It just would not codify those increased protections for traffic going through the Cherry community. Does that make, if you could come down, sorry. And as Ms. Rainey's coming down, I know that some folks in the community had some concerns that this could be done through administrative change and not through a zoning change. But my understanding from staff is that they want to do this through a zoning change to kind of protect the interests of the community, to ensure that these increased protections actually do get built. So I'm kind of confused why there would be opposition to that at this point in time.
Okay, I wish our height of the building, and that we want to be put on record that we were in opposition to that.
Got you. Got you. Yes, and that was one of the compromises that the community didn't like the building, didn't like the overall structure, but ultimately we got to a compromise where we pushed to get some of the improvements that would not have been there otherwise. So I hear what you're saying. You just want to go on record to say that
That's right.
you're still opposed to
Exactly.
the intensity of the building. You still don't think that the intensity is correct,
Right.
but you're not necessarily commenting on.
Yeah, like I said, we were just in opposition in part, not.
I got you.
Not totally, yeah.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ashmira?
Yeah, if you could just stay there, Ms. Barbara. So I just want to make sure, so you are opposed to the building height, which was previously approved. I remember this was very contentious rezoning, but you're not opposed to the transportation improvements?
Exactly.
Which really this focuses on right now?
Right.
Okay. So we received an email from Ms. Gardner about expressing some concern that Mr. Winston had alluded to. They wanted, so maybe Mr. Patton can address that, or someone from zoning staff, that the community is not clear as to why the rezoning is required. And I know Ms. Gardner might be listening, and other neighbors. So I would like you to clarify why this rezoning is required. And they had asked for a deferral of this rezoning because they were only notified last week about this, and they had no time to engage. So, and there were no community meetings at all. Is that right? There are no community meetings?
There would
So
have,
could
they would
you,
have had.
why was there not a community meeting?
No, there were community meetings.
There was? So I'm not sure why Ms. Gardner sent an email saying there was no community meeting, they were not informed.
So they would have had to have a community meeting for this to even be at a hearing in front of us this evening, because that's required for a conditional plan or a conditional rezoning, and a site plan amendment is technically a conditional rezoning as well. So the requirement to go this through a site plan amendment versus doing this at a staff level, staff does have limited discretion in our ordinance to make changes to approved rezonings. We also have the discretion to say we don't want to take that discretion, if that makes sense. And in some cases, the level of changes also get to a point where they're more significant than staff is really comfortable with doing at just an administrative level without going through some form of public process. In this instance, you had staff that worked on this and these changes who also had a lot of that history from 2017 of this being contentious and this being something that, had a lot of community conversation, and felt that the best process was, again, for this to continue to play out in that realm of the public side versus staff just restamping a plan internally. So I think there was some, more cautionary discretion used in this one to take this through the site plan amendment. The changes are fairly significant. They weren't something that were envisioned when this was previously approved, and typically when they rise to that level, staff does kind of kick it into that site plan amendment process, which is what occurred here. So I know there was some concern about notice. Of course, we mail our notices out within that 10-day period. Once they kind of get out of our office, which is usually week to 10 days or plus prior to the meeting, we kind of rely on the post office to get them out in a timely manner. That may not have occurred. I know there was some folks that got them late. We did have a pretty lengthy call with the community on Thursday with several members from Cherry, Myers Park, Chantilly, Elizabeth, and talked through all of that as well. So I'm certainly aware of the concerns. We actually did turn around also and request on the petitioner to see if they wanted to defer, just to give the community some more time. And of course, that's at the petitioner's discretion. They declined, which I also understand, because there's been a lot of dialogue on this project over the years. So that's kind of where we are and how we got to this point. I think that it was a good decision to move this into that site plan amendment process, just to have this conversation again publicly. But that's, again, that was at the discretion of zoning staff, and that's where we take our information from that group. So.
Got it. That is very helpful, Mr. Patton. This is the first time I'm seeing a rezoning just because of transportation improvements, and certainly rezonings are expensive. And it's time consuming.
It is, yep.
So was it because these changes were not in the original request that was in 2017?
Yes.
That's right. This resulted from a conversation between the community and CDOT. They made this request of us. Frankly, I wouldn't have wanted to do it administratively.
Right, because this was part of the
That would have been
community
below the radar.
benefits
Right.
that council and the community had worked on to come to this middle ground to garner the support from some community members. Okay. So if you could reach out to the community members who had reached out to us. I know Ms. Gardner and some of her neighbors had reached out. So if you could just sit down with them and address their concerns as to why this is necessary. And staff, if you could join them, because they're not clear as to why this rezoning is needed. And second point I wanted to, so in the email that I received, they thought the decision was tonight, but decision is not till the next month, so that gives you almost 4 weeks to work through that with the community, and just help them understand this is actually a transportation improvement. It's a community benefit that the Cherry community is deriving out of this as part of the negotiated agreement in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And that's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Barbara. I appreciate you coming up again, reminding us that the community is still against the height that was approved in 2017. I don't know if there is anything we can do at this point, but Ms. Billy has taken a note, and it's in the record that the community is still against that height. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So for those of us who weren't on council in 2017, I want to understand this rezoning petition also. So was this issue, was the traffic talked about, the traffic was negotiated in 2017, right?
That's right.
And so the petition was approved with the current traffic structure.
That's correct.
So why are we hearing this? And is the height, right now, would we just be voting on the traffic, or is all of that open for negotiation?
Well, we've submitted this petition. So to answer your questions in order, our approved zoning, which is on the books today, says that we would be building a lane here that would go straight across into Cherry, and there would be a turn lane here. Since, in the 5 years, the community has continued conversations with CDOT and does not want a lane that goes directly into Cherry. So they have asked us to amend our petition and take that out of our petition. We have agreed to do that. That is the only purpose of the petition, is to incorporate the improvements that they've requested.
So does that open up the entire petition?
I mean, well, I represent the petitioner. We have filed just for this item at the request.
Okay, so for maybe I should ask Mr. Pettin, does that open up the entire petition up for approval? Because what Ms. Barbara stated, that she supports the traffic improvements, but she's letting us know that she's against the height. So if we're hearing from the residents, and there's a new council representative who may think differently, the market's changed. I mean, I don't know. I'm asking you, from a council perspective, are we looking at this petition as a whole, or are we looking at this as a whole?
This petition is solely to modify the transportation improvements. So let's say this petition moves forward to decision in January, and the petition doesn't move forward and get approved successfully, gets denied. The 2017 petition is still in place without the transportation improvements being proposed. So all the entitlements from 2017 will still be in place whether this site plan amendment gets approved or not. What won't move forward is the improvements to the transportation side of things that have since changed since 2017. So that's really the only, that would be the only outcome affected by this petition not being technically or potentially approved, when it gets to decision time. Everything else from 2017 would remain intact. So you wouldn't do you wouldn't undo any of the entitlements from 2017. You would only be denying the proposed transportation improvements that are in front of us this evening.
So I think we would want to make sure the residents are clear about that. That this council was only voting on the improved transportation, that the height is not up for decision under this council. So I would just want to make sure that the residents were very, very clear about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to be clear for the record that these traffic pattern changes came about from working with the Cherry community. So this is something that the Cherry community has provided input and insight into in conjunction with CDOT. So this specific petition is something that the neighborhood does want to protect the character of Cherry. And it is not related to the petition from 2017. So we can't reopen that, but I will say that the community very much supports this petition today, and there have been multiple touch points with the community on this specific issue. Of course, there's always opportunity to educate other constituents in the neighborhood and exposed them to what their representation of the neighborhood has worked very hard with the city on. So in between now, Colin, and a month's time, we have the opportunity to spread that news, right? That this is really and truly an effort, joint collaboration between Cherry neighborhood, CDOT, and the petitioner. So we have that opportunity, Ms. Johnson, and we'll do that. We'll make sure that the residents are educated and they know what's current state. But this is something that the neighborhood supports.
So can I respond to that? Because it's I know you work closely, but it's confusing for me to see a resident that appears in opposition. So that's, and if she can come back up and I can ask a question if that's okay.
I think what Ms. Rainey was saying, because she went on record to state it, that she was against the height. She wasn't against this petition in part. We can ask the clerk, but she said in part she was against it due to the height, but we can't address that tonight. What we can address is the traffic pattern that the neighbors have worked very closely with CDOT and leadership for.
And to be fair, even Mr. Pettin wasn't here at that point in time. What I can say is that, again, it's been reiterated a couple times. This was very contentious, but in the sense that the community was very sure about what they wanted and what they didn't want. This building, it was the height mixed with the use, right? I think there was a proposed hotel, some retail at the bottom, on top also an office tower that was part of it. This was not residential, right? And so the concerns were, again, these traffic patterns that were coming in and out, specifically turning on Baldwin to go through Cherry for folks that would be commuting for that. It was too intense of a development. The community never wavered from their belief that this type of intensity would be appropriate. But even if the status quo remained in that area, there were traffic conditions along Providence Road that kind of abutted that they wanted to see improved, right? And they saw that this petition as a way to get some of those improvements. This was one of those improvements that they wanted, but CDOT didn't necessarily get there at that point in time. Again, it seems like the work has been ongoing. Again, as Ms. Anderson said, and as it was stated in their email, they thought this change could have been done through an administrative change, so they weren't opposed to this. And the concern about going through a rezoning is that something else that the community didn't want to see was this kind of languish in perpetuity. They want to see, if it's going to get built, they want to see these improvements get done. So when they saw that this was come through a rezoning, their concern was the time from when this got approved to when a development started would be extended, which is why they wanted to just do administrative change that would not have elongated that time. Mr. Pettin has said that there is no there's no extension of those vested rights, past 5 years like we did with the original one. So again, all of this is, I think the community, this is a great thing. The Cherry community is very smart about our policies and about our procedures, and they're utilizing their intelligence of the process to make sure that they are very clear about what they value and how they want their community developed and the surrounding area developed.
You have a close.
Motion to close
No,
here.
I'm sorry.
Second.
You have a motion to close in a second. You can discuss that motion.
We need the majority to approve that, right? I mean, it was just what I asked before you all answered was if I could hear from the resident to make sure that they are clear, because it appears to me that I just want to make sure that the residents understand, and I'm not saying you're not aware of the process. It just, I want to make sure that it's understood that we are not hearing the most contentious part of the petition. That we are only voting on what you're in favor of. That's all. I just wanted to make it clear.
Ma'am, the council member Ms. Rainey has asked you a question. You can come down and answer it if you wish.
It's good offline conversation.
I thought she did.
Do you feel like you've answered the question?
Yeah, when I asked her that question and she said yes.
Might as well do it again.
Come down to, if you're going to respond, please come down to the microphone.
This is the worst. This is the worst.
Please be respectful.
We're giving Ms. Rainey a workout on her legs up and down the stairs.
What, I just want to make sure that we were always in opposition to the height. It didn't just come up tonight. I just want to make that clear. So, but I hear what you're saying, that tonight it's only about the traffic.
Right.
But we just want to be put on record that, you know, it still stands about the height. And people, you need to know that, you know. And we did say what we were in favor of, so we're not totally against.
And I, as a council member who prides myself on listening to residents,
Right.
you know, that if that's an area of contention, I want to let you know for the record that we don't have any control over that piece of it.
Okay.
That's not up for decision.
Okay.
The only thing up for decision is the traffic improvements that you're in favor of.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Ms. Edgemere,
holidays.
Ms. Edgemere, did you have something else?
I'm good.
Thank you. It's been motion.
Second.
That's been seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor to close the public hearing, please raise your hand. That's unanimous.
We did it.
Moving on to item number 37, rezoning petition 2022-065 by Griffin Family Investments for approximately 37.1 acres located on the east side of Beatties Ford Road, south of McIntyre Avenue, and north of Sunset Road in Council District 2, Mr. Graham's district. The current zoning is R3 Single Family Residential, and the proposed zoning is UR2 Urban Residential Conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation. There is opposition to this petition, so after Mr. Pettin's presentation, Mr. Brown, you will have 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. 2022-065, it's just over 37 acres off Beatties Ford Road, just south of McIntyre Avenue and just north of Sunset Road. It is currently zoned R3, single-family residential. The proposed zoning is to go to a UR2 conditional. Neighborhood 1 is the recommended place type on the adopted policy map. And the proposal is requesting up to 236 townhome-style dwelling units. That would come in at about 6.3 units per acre. Does commit to an 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk, as well as a 5-foot bike lane along Beatties Ford Road. Does provide internal sidewalks and pedestrian connections through the site. It does construct a CATS ADA-compliant bus waiting pad and shelter pad along the site's frontage. That would all be coordinated with CATS and permitting. Also would provide future street connections to the north and south of the site for future development and connectivity. Does also provide a minimum of 2 amenity areas, including clubhouse, pool, cabana, dog park, garden, or landscaping. Also commits to a 100-foot wide buffer along the eastern property line adjacent to the industrial zone property. And also there's some significant stream buffer and tree save area on top of that 100-foot buffer for a pretty good substantial separation between those uses. And also commits to architectural standards, including building materials, as incorporated through most of the conditional rezonings for attached single family. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. Do have some outstanding issues related to transportation to resolve. It is inconsistent overall with the neighborhood 1 place type for this map, however, would contribute to a variety of housing options and availability in the area. It's well served by the activity center to the south. There are some open space commitments and pocket parks throughout the development, as well as a almost 2-acre amenity area, adequate buffering to the industrial adjacent to the site, as well as the CATS shelter, bus pad, and bike lane that are being improved on the site. So that would also, again, with that CATS bus pad on Beatties Ford, that would provide some good transportation access within close distance to the site. So again, staff does recommend approval, and we'll be happy to take any questions following the petitioner's presentation and presentation by members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, you have 10 minutes.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Colin Brown on behalf of the petitioner Griffin Family Investments. With me tonight are Larry Griffin and Mike Griffin. You'll hear from Mike in a moment. The Griffin family, as many of you know, have been a presence on the Beatties Ford corridor for many years and have been very active in a lot of meaningful projects in that area. What we're talking about is really the home place of their family, which has the star on it, and I'll let the Griffins give you some of that history. And then they were also recently a neighbor who had lived for many, many years, deceased, and they assembled that property. So here are the properties that we're talking about. Good location, easy access to Food Lion Shopping Center here, good employment opportunities, and really we think a good place for some of this missing middle housing that we talk about so frequently. When it was apparent to the real estate community that the Griffins had assembled this large piece of real estate, they were approached by a lot of folks, including a lot of industrial folks that had developments back here that thought this would be a good phase two. The Griffins, I think, have ongoing conversations with folks in the community, had really made the commitment that they did not want to go in that direction, that the best thing they could do from the community was to provide a high-quality residential product in the area. So that's what they've endeavored to do. 37 acres is a large piece of property. Current zoning is R3. 2040 plan calls for this to be N1, as Dave mentioned, and we're pretty close to that type of intensity. As you know, our new zoning, if this were not approved, our new ordinance would allow attached housing throughout. We think we're doing a little bit better job with this plan. We think there's some positives that as we go through this conditional zoning, the community and the council get some assurances. And so obviously commitment to residential development, townhome product, that density is only 6.4 dwelling units per acre, so probably pretty close to a yield that would be allowed by right. I've got large buffers obviously to the rear where there's some wetlands to buffer up against that industrial. What's important is the commitment the development team has made is for an alley-loaded product. As you know, that creates a very nice streetscape and really ensures a higher-end product. So when you come down the streets, you don't see driveway, garage door. We have all alleys to the rear, which is a commitment the team is making. The specific builder has not been selected, but the Griffins are building into the rezoning petition those types of commitments that ensure a higher level of product. So the alley-loaded design, architectural commitments, and then a large community space in the center. That is a colored version of the plan. I think it blends nicely in the community. We've been doing early outreach, have had a good number of conversations with the Hyde Park community leadership, good responses from them. We had gotten some feedback at the community meeting of some concerns, and then we did get a little bit of a bomb. This week, Councilman Bram connected us with the Deltas of Charlotte. The Delta Center is located here on Beatties Ford Road. I think we've got a robust turnout from the Deltas tonight, so you'll hear from them. But this was kind of news to us, and I'll let them tell the details of their story, but our understanding is that they may have been in some conversations some time ago with the prior owner of this property and had hoped to acquire some of the property for additional parking. That is, we have not discussed this with city staff of whether they would be supportive of that at all. We did have a call with some of the Deltas on Friday. Certainly, and frankly, we said to them, hey, we don't think we could accommodate that on our site, but we'll continue talking with you about it. We think there may be some solutions in the area on some other parcels. So I imagine that will be a significant point of discussion. We did have some additional feedback from some neighbors here. We think we're providing good buffering, and this is not an overly intense development. So with that high-level overview, I did want to give Mike Griffin just a few moments to introduce himself and probably maybe talk about our plans for ongoing conversations.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Council Pro Tem, and first of all, a special thank you on this holiday season for your time. Sometimes a thankless job, and really appreciate what you do for our city. It's a privilege to represent my uncle, my father, my two cousins, and my brother. My grandparents bought this property in the 40s, half this property, and we grew up there and had many holiday seasons there. So with that said, we have a special amenity, not just for this property, but for the whole historic West End corridor. And we wanted to make sure we did everything that we could possibly do to make it the top quality product that we can. And we do think this product is that product. As Colin mentioned, we were not aware of the Delta's need for parking really till Friday. And we had a nice conversation and tried to understand what their needs are. Not sure that we can accommodate that, but we will continue to have some conversation with them. We didn't know about the previous conversation they had with Ms. Riley. She had lived there until her passing, over 100 years old, and we knew for the last 50 years that she had promised us the opportunity to purchase it, which we did, but unknowing that there was a need for the Delta for that parking. But we will try to continue to work with them when we can. Thank you for your time.
You have 4 minutes, if you want it. Okay. Thank you very much. In opposition, we have Melissa Diaz and Amber McQueen. You have 10 minutes to speak between the two of you.
Careful, those stairs are steep.
Thank you for your service. And I will say I'm somebody that did think that you guys just rubber stamp stuff. My concern is I have 2 properties.
Can you just
and-
identify yourself, please?
Amber McQueen. I have 2 properties abutting this development, and my concern is the buffer. They talked about the alleyway. I will basically be looking at an alley for 236 units. There is woods right there, and so their communication from their lawyers basically said they think that's adequate, and they only have to, under, I guess, the zoning, they're not required to do any buffer. And so they're going to do 23 feet. That's about a 2-car garage length or width. And so my concern really is, how am I going to address the noise, the pollution, now that I have an alleyway behind me with cars driving back and forth, if they're not going to put any kind of buffer. And so if you see Crestwood Drive, I'm part of the Hyde Park neighborhood. Those are my properties up there. I don't know how to use this. So I'm really kind of the only house that is directly impacted by this development. Outside of that, I really, again, I pretty much felt like you guys would just go with it. And having been here for almost 30 years, I've seen the transformation of Charlotte and the gentrification. And so I just would like for them to be courteous and put an adequate buffer between my house and my property, the same way they are doing some of the things for the industrial park. And I have pictures because this is now, and as leaves and we get colder, it opens up a lot more. So I can actually see the putting range. I have 4 broken windows that will let you know it's very close. And so that is really my concern. This is not sufficient, what is already existing between our properties. And that's really all I have.
Thank you very much, Ms. McQueen. Melissa Diaz, you have 7 minutes and 40 seconds.
Good evening. Thank you in advance for your open and collaborative minds and servant hearts as I speak to you today. I am Melissa D. Snell, and I'm a native Charlottean, a second-generation graduate of West Charlotte Senior High, and alumni of 2 UNC system universities. My roots and love and dedication to the city are deep and long, and I stand here before you tonight representing 2 organizations that have deep roots as well. I stand before you as the current chair of Deltas of Charlotte Foundation and the 1,000+ community members of our partner organization, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, but most importantly, the citizens of Charlotte. I'm the current chair of the Deltas of Charlotte Foundation, a 501(c)(3) organization. Our mission is to strengthen the lives of women and children in the greater Charlotte region. I also extend regards on behalf of Katrina Young, president of the Charlotte Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, as she could not be in attendance tonight due to travel. Combined, We have given hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships, charitable donations, and programming for the Charlotte community. Additionally, we provide 10-month programs for middle school and high school age girls. The Delta Center, the property has served the community in a myriad of ways as an early voting site, as well as working to have youth rallies for some partner organizations, in addition to fighting the food desert in the 28216 corridor. So there are a myriad of activities and programs that we do in the community in order to move the dial. We understand that the council is responsible for the infrastructure of Charlotte, that you do not do programming. We do. So a lot of times people from the city suggest that the council should do things about affordable housing. But we do. We do programming with wealth, for women in wealth. We do financial literacy programming. We do all of those things, and we give scholarships. So we do all of those things that you can't do. So we need that type of partnership, and we're looking to you for your influence and collaboration for us to meet those needs. You should have received correspondence from me last week voicing our concerns. If you haven't had an opportunity to read it, I'll give you a quick background and context of our opposition to this zoning petition. We've been in touch with the Riley family for a number of years, since 2011. Based on our many previous conversations, we were awaiting the time when the family was ready to sell. We were given assurances, verbal assurances, that we would be the first to know, and willingness to sell us the parcels located directly behind our property, which you've seen before. Today, the parking lot has 45 spaces, which hinders our ability to effectively scale the community service efforts to make a larger impact. Based on those assurances, in earnest, we made individual sacrifices as members, and were intentional in paying off our commercial loan in half the time, in addition to raising capital in anticipation of purchasing at minimum a portion or parcel when it became available. Approval of the petition in its current mock-up will hinder us from being able to do that. We'll be landlocked. Shame on us for not having those verbal communications done in writing. So we would like not to repeat that mistake with this petition. So we did have a meeting, and thank you, Councilman Graham, for facilitating that conversation with us. We wanted to make sure that you look at the property, it's within 300 feet. So the plans as they stand and looking at them, we were asking if there were single garage or double garages. And there's not a lot of guest parking. There's no buffer between our property and that, and we feel like that will impede our property, and that there will be people that will park on our parking lot. If you've ever lived in a townhome, people use their garage as storage, or they don't like to move the two cars. They don't like to switch the cars out. It's easier just to park on the street. If anyone has ever lived in a community like that, or there are any guests that they have, it's easy to pull into our lot and then walk the 300 feet to get over to the other area. With the lack of guest parking, it impedes what we will do, our ability to scale, and there's no significant barrier there. We also are currently looking at what would happen, because we have a detention pond at the back of the property. We wanted the organization to assume those, to encumber the maintenance of that drainage area, and we could possibly fill it in and create additional parking for ourselves. In addition to that, we want to make sure that if there are any type of costs that are that come with the construction, that we have some avenue in order to try to recoup those expenses based upon anything that comes up with the construction. So what we're asking for your support as council is a deferment until we can get those assurances in writing, and to try to work out a neighborly solution for what we have. And just as an aside, I would also like to give you some feedback concerning the zoning process. The meeting, in trying to find where we were going to go or about the petition, it took multiple phone calls. We didn't know about the community meeting until after the fact. I knew of the November 21st meeting. I signed into that on Facebook Live. I typically look at zoning meetings. just for my own personal, I'm a political nerd, if you will, so I watch it for my own benefit. But to this date, even for this meeting today, we never received notice in writing about this public hearing. We had to look for it. And if you looked at the zoning calendar, it wasn't available until just recently. So for those of us that are working in nonprofit areas or that aren't looking at things like this daily, it seems as if it's a check the box process in order for us to participate, because it doesn't lend itself to a true dialogue about what's happening. I can appreciate the fact that the Griffins felt that we dropped a bomb on them. We felt the same. So I just encourage you all to take a look at the processes that you have, because it's not just a zoning petition. You're talking about businesses, you're talking about people's lives, and you're talking about the good work that we do with the city. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Brown, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Certainly, I think that's fair. I'd say we mail to our mailing, the sign is posted, but I know they were just as shocked as I was. I could tell by the tenor of our call on Friday. Interesting conversation, before the question bid, can we put some park on our site? The comment tonight about maybe enabling them to park in their stormwater area, there's plenty to discuss. We are now connected with them. Obviously, frankly, we kind of wanted this aired so everyone could hear as we have additional conversations maybe with staff and get feedback from you all, and we will continue working with the Deltas as well as the adjacent property owner on some buffering for her. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and let me take the opportunity to thank the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta for being here tonight and voicing their opinions about this particular rezoning. Mr. Brown, if you can come back for me and help me understand the issue of, I got 5 issues actually. 1, parking, right? And the conversations you've had with the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta about shared parking, the ability to purchase land from you guys to get parking. Is that a possibility? And
so can I have my slides and I'll go through. So we talk about parking a lot and some of you have different opinions on it. We think there's sufficient parking on this site with the driveways, the garages, and on-street parking. I think, it had not occurred to us until we talked to the Deltas on Friday. I think one of their points was someone may park in the Deltas lot and one of our residents might park in our lot and walk over there. So that's something we need to think through. Perhaps we could put some fencing to prevent that. But this is the Delta Center here. Their structure maybe is in here. They have parking to the rear, 45 to 50 spaces. They then, at a significant percentage of the site, is encumbered by a stormwater BMP facility. And so our property is here. So the question, when we started talking with them, we were talking about, gosh, maybe an acre or 2, so taking all of this area and turn it into parking, which we do not think is a good fit. We think there could be some better opportunities for them with some adjacent parcels. But we've got to talk through that. And the Deltas will say they don't have a site plan. We don't either. It is something that the Griffins would have to engage their engineer to draw something up that we could look at.
And these are adjacent properties that you own?
That's right. So, and the speaker mentioned this property here had been owned by the Riley family. The conversations between the Rileys and the Deltas occurred some time ago, which we were not aware of. The Griffin family now owns this property.
I'm familiar about how tight parking's over there. I sometimes park in your lot too when I'm at the Kappa House, so I apologize. So I get it. The detention pond, I mean, is that a possibility? And the upkeep of it, help me understand that.
To be honest, I'm glad I wanted to have this hearing so we can kind of get it out there. There are things that if I went in and talked to staff about it, there would be no way in the world. But it's not a terrible idea, which we would be happy to explore.
Okay. And you've got a listing of all their concerns. Have you seen the letter?
I don't know if we've seen the letter, but we're in I mean, you connected us, so we're in contact. And certainly we expect to have ongoing conversations.
So what I would like to do is to help be a facilitator in those conversations, to make sure that they are adequately heard in terms of the number of points that they have raised via their letter, and just being a good neighbor. Also, the young lady behind you, Mrs. McQueen, she seems to have some significant issues too in terms of buffering. Could you help me respond to
her property's in this area? We have looked at that. We do think there's good separation between our units and hers. And we can talk with her and probably end up us all going out here on site and looking at it together and looking at the condition of her property. And it may be that, some additional buffering or fencing there.
Well, I am certainly willing to go on site as well, to visit with you and Mrs. McQueen to kind of make sure that she is heard. And if there's something that we can do to help her out, that would be really nice. Certainly, I think the conversation with the Delta is a little bit more involved on a number of points, and so hopefully after the holidays, we can kind of get together, Mrs. Dees, to kind of find out next steps. Obviously, a decision won't be made until January, hopefully.
January at the earliest. I can imagine these conversations continue.
January. So I think we still have some time, but I think they make they have some legitimate concerns that they have voiced, and again, I want to help be an honest broker to make sure that we can get together. I know the Griffin family. They're flexible, I hope. They have been flexible in the past, and hopefully that type of flexibility will come into play as we kind of sit down collectively together to talk about how we can create a win-win for everybody. So that's the goal for me, and I will be in contact with you as well as Mrs. Dees after the Christmas holiday to earnestly begin to tackle this. Mrs. McQueen, I'll give you a call as well to get with the Griffins on site to walk the property and make sure that there's clear understanding between both parties involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ashmira?
Thank you so much. Some of my questions were addressed by Mr. Graham. So first, I just want to thank Deltas for the investments that you make in scholarship. I'm the beneficiary. I received my first scholarship from Delta when we didn't have resources. So I really appreciate the investment that you made in my future to help me go to college. I'm very grateful. And all the other work that you do. A couple of questions that I have for you, Mr. Brown, and you may not have an answer to that today, but I would like to see, Ms. McQueen had mentioned and showed pictures of how this would look. Do you have a picture of how this alleyway would look from her property? Because her concern was specifically around the buffer, and then also how her view would be different with this development. So is there can we see how it would look?
We can try. The photos she has, and we'll follow up, are probably the best because they're from her property. And I think she's looking into what is a golf driving range now, so it is not heavily treed. So there is potential for us to supplement that and give them more screening probably than they have now.
And even natural buffering would help. So I don't know what the buffer is over there on the other side. Could you tell me what the buffer is from her property to this site right here?
Looking to my, 23 feet between the property line and the alleyway.
No. Well, I think to put that in perspective, we have to see how it would look.
Okay. You just mean a mock-up?
Yeah, so if you could just sort of provide some sort of pictures, that would certainly be very helpful. And I know Ms. Melissa had raised concern about buffer as well from the Delta Sigma Theta house. So what does that look like right now under this site design?
Well, the buffer is similar, and I think that conversation is going to be very...
23.
Yeah, it'll be very different if we end up trying to create some parking there, right? So I think we've got to see what direction we go, and I think what they most would like is some parking. And if we have some parking, then we'll obviously figure out how to screen that. Currently, there was just the regular buffer, but I think that conversation is going to move in a different direction.
Right, and I think, I know Mr. Graham is going to facilitate that conversation, especially to address the parking and the buffer. But I think having some sort of mock-up would help us understand how this would all look. I think this is the second or third time today this public notice process question had come up. So, Mr. Patton, if you could address that question, because I just want to make sure that if we need to reconsider our process on what is the time frame that's been given, because I hear that not just today, but even in the past, where some community members did not get a notice or they got it after the fact. So I just want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So what is the current process? If you could just tell us a little bit about it so that people in the audience can hear it, and council can understand the current process and see if we need to make any changes to that.
So the notice process is mandated by state statute. So we have a notice period that we have to provide notice within no sooner than 10 days and not any greater than 25 days. So you have basically a 10 to 25 day window to mail notices out. We identify our public hearing ads within that same time frame. So that notice also includes advertisement in the paper. So when we send that first round of notices out for the legal ad that's going to run in the newspaper, that's when we start to generate our own notice letters as well. So it all goes out around the same time. And again, as we talked about earlier, we get those out of the office within that time frame, and then they get into the hands of U.S. mail, and that's kind of, they're not sent first class or prior, they're just sent standard mail. And so at some point, that's gets to be a little bit out of our control about how long they may take to get in the hands of folks. I've heard the same. We tried to get them out a little bit earlier than we have been in the past, because sometimes we were getting up closer to that 10-day window, but we're trying to get those out within that 15-day window to give us some extra cushion. So we're working to get them out within that timeline that state mandates that we have to do it in. And unfortunately, sometimes I think there's either delay in delivery or delivery to either a post office box, which we've heard generates some concerns as well, because folks don't always check that. Particularly, we had some nonprofits from another rezoning earlier this evening that said we don't really go and check that box very regularly, so we didn't get it, in a timely manner. So, sometimes there's things out of our control or that we don't have a lot of time, but we always get our letters out within that mandated period that the state requires of us.
So I hear that really the window is between 10 to 25 days.
Yep.
So if we were to push it more towards 25 days, I think that will give a little bit of more cushion.
So, and we've looked at that. The challenge with that is our review period to get petitions cleared to go to hearing starts to get within more of that 15-day period, because we've got plan review cycles and everything else, and those wrap up essentially the same week that we've got to get the legal ad out. So it's kind of a, 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. Plan reviews occur, they get finalized. We know that they're ready for hearing. We put them on the ad, and that's all within that, 15-day kind of window. So we start that process really about as early as we can, just because we have to do the plan reviews to get them ready to see if they're even ready for hearing. Because you might have a petition that's technically ready for a December hearing, but when you get to that last bit of review, you realize there's still too many issues and it can't go. So we don't know that until kind of that, 2-week period before, so.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
President.
there's always room for improvement and room for us to get them out quicker, but that's kind of what we're up against as well, so.
Right, and I think this is something, Ms. Craig and I were just talking in the back room about some of the processes and how it could be improved, so that residents have more time to attend community meeting, to voice their concerns, because a lot of our community members, this is really, it's not every day that they come to zoning meetings. So it's really convoluted process where it really takes a lot of hand-holding, and it also takes a lot of research on their part to even come to this point. And, you know, we need to figure out a way as to what we can do as a council within that 10 to 25-day window that we have based on the state statute to make this process a little bit smooth for our residents.
I'll say one thing that did, I'd say, improve things is on the front end of the process. That's when we do our next door noticing as well, which has really captured probably thousands of more residents on that platform versus just a mailed notice. We may mail 30 letters, but you may capture 3,000-4,000 people that are subscribed to the neighborhoods within a half mile on next door. So that gives everybody like 3 months ahead notice, advance notice that a petition's been filed, and then there's information for them to go to the petition page on our website, which has other info and who to contact, and they can kind of keep track. So we were trying to get the early notices out and cover that a little bit greater, which I think we've done a good job of. But that conversation of getting to community meetings and getting to hearings, because we didn't go as far as including those in our notices on Nextdoor, because we also have to work within city communication. We didn't want to inundate residents with City of Charlotte posts on Nextdoor to where they just turn us off and don't listen anymore. So we're balancing a lot of that also. But the advance notice, I think, has been good, but it doesn't always lead to folks stay engaged throughout that entire process up to the actual hearing date. So that's something I think we can work on and try to improve a little bit further.
Absolutely. Thank you. I wasn't aware that we were leveraging Nextdoor for that. No, that's great.
Yeah, it's actually generates a lot of interesting conversation as well on petitions, and it's a benefit to us because we get to see some of that, and it's a benefit to the petitioner and community because they can kind of talk amongst themselves. So I'd like to maybe see if there's other ways we can leverage that a little bit more even further, but for now that's kind of where we are with it on our process, is that early, like 3-month out engagement as soon as a petition gets filed.
I would also point out that Ms. Deese lives in 28269, so and is not a resident at the Delta House. So we could mail those out 3 months in advance and post it on Nextdoor all day. But Ms. Deese would, and I would imagine many of the folks who frequent the Delta House would not receive those communications because they're not residents that live in that statutory vicinity. So as we think about better ways to make our processes more accessible and more equitable, again, these are the conversations that we're having. It's not just the people that live in areas that are affected by growth and development. It's people who live, work, and play in all these areas. So we certainly are trying to figure out how to make equitable processes as we continue to grow as a city. With that, I'll recognize Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to take the time to thank Chair Nell and my sorors of Delta Sigma Theta for your commitment to scholarship and service to all Charlotteans. I, of course, have been to the Delta House, and there's limited parking in general, not at the house, at the center, but just in that area. And so when you're standing up programs to impact the lives of young women and women within the community, they need an opportunity, a space to participate in that process. And so, we have Deltas sitting, parking at the house. We have constituents. We have Kappas parking at the house. Everybody's parking at the house, right? And so I'm hopeful that Mr. Graham will facilitate and usher a process with the Griffins. And thank you for your investment in the community as well, to the Griffin family. But I am hopeful now that you are aware of the list of challenges that the Deltas have, that you will work with them and come up with some potential solutions. I also would like to say that, and this is Mr. Graham's district, but within this area, if we're going to add 200 plus townhomes and potentially not have adequate parking or buffering, the amount of noise that will be introduced into that community, as the young lady mentioned earlier, will be something new that and potentially disrupt the neighborhood and the community. And so, Mr. Brown, I know that you'll work to come up with some potential solutions to address these things. So I just wanted to say thank you and acknowledge it for your service. And I also would like to agree with Ms. Ajamira, Mr. Pettin. I know that we're working on our process, but we do hear far too often from constituents that not only have they not been notified or they did not receive the information, but just the mystification around this process in general, around the rezoning process, is something that we all have to deal with in our districts. And so that's something I think we can address. Like, it's within our wheelhouse to address that and to improve it. And so looking forward to working with staff to come up with some potential innovative ideas around how we can improve that process.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. A couple things. Thank you for coming out today. I want to thank Ms. Deese, District 4 representative, I assume. So thank you for your words. And also from Ms. McQueen. Did you submit the pictures that you have? Is there a copy for council for our packet? Is there? Okay. Okay. Well, if you email that to council members, we'd love to see.
Email it to the clerk.
Email to the clerk, yeah, and then we'll get a copy. And you can make sure, we will make sure you get her contact information. Thank you. Yeah, and again, and I thank you for your engagement. I look forward to supporting Councilmember Graham. Again, I'm curious to know how long the Griffins have owned the property.
So my father was born in 1940 and his brother's 1936. I think their parents bought it in 1944 or 43, half the property. And then the Miss Riley property, she passed at 103 years old, and we just bought that in 2020. So half we've owned for approximately 70 years, and the other half 2 or 3 years.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification because I heard Ms. Riley owned the property and had made this verbal agreement. So I was just trying to get clarification.
Yeah, so it's
on the ownership.
approximately we owned half, and then Miss Riley owned the other half until recently.
Okay. Yeah, again, I look forward to working with Mr. Graham. We heard the noise pollution. Both speakers talked about the buffers. So I think, Mr. Brown, there's room to work with the residents and also the petitioner in compromise and some concession for the residents. Thank you.
It's the season.
Thank you. That's all.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? We will move on to our final hearing of the evening, agenda item number 38, rezoning petition 2022-069 by the Fallon Company for approximately 16.69 acres located on the east side of South Boulevard, southwest side of South Caldwell Street, on the west side of Templeton Avenue, and the north side of Euclid Avenue on Council District 1, Ms. Anderson's district. The current zoning is TODM, Transit-Oriented Development Mixed-Use Optional, and TODR, Transit-Oriented Development Residential Optional. The proposed zoning is TODUC, Transit-Oriented Development Urban Center Conditional, and TODNC, CD, Transit-Oriented Development Neighborhood Center Conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation and technical revisions related to transportation and land use. There is no opposition to this meeting, to this petition. So after Mr. Patton's presentation, Ms. Grant, you'll have 3 minutes if you so choose to use it.
All right, thank you. Let me gather myself. My pen just exploded on me. Okay. All right. 2022-069, excuse me, is about 16.69 acres. It's located on the east side of South Boulevard, just south Caldwell Street, west of Templeton Ave, and north side of Euclid Avenue in the Dilworth community. The current zoning is TOD-M optional and TOD-R optional. Those are our old TOD districts that were updated back in 2019. The proposed zoning is to take those older TOD districts and bring them forward to both the TOD-UC and TOD-NC districts. Both are being proposed conditionally. And the adopted place type for the project does recommend a regional activity center in blue on the front half, and then neighborhood 2 in that orange area on the back half of the property, a little more than half. So this project, again, there's lots of notes on here. All of this is spelled out with both all of these notes and a graphic in your staff analysis. So I'm not going to cover these in verbatim. There's multiple development areas that range from development area A through F. And in those different areas, there are different proposed uses and intensities. So development area A is 21 single-family attached townhome units at 40 feet in height. That's the area primarily along Euclid Avenue. Development area B1 is TOD-NC conditional as well. That's for residential and optional ground floor retail. That would max out at 55 feet in height within 100 feet of single-family uses, and then 65 feet in height outside of that 100-foot distance. Does also provide 40-foot side yard with a 15-foot undisturbed buffer. Development area B2 is where we get into TOD-UC, and that provides some residential and optional ground floor retail, again with a max height of 65. B3 is TOD-UC for office and retail, capped out at 65 feet. Development area C is TOD-NC, and that's 1.6 acres of amenitized open space. You can see that area hatched with a green label on it on the screen. Development area D is also TOD-NC. That's for residential and ground floor retail with a 65-foot height cap within 200 feet of single family, and then beyond that 200 feet up to 75 feet in height. Development area E1, TOD-UC, 235 feet max height through bonus provisions and also providing 20 EV-ready parking spaces. Development area E2, also TOD-UC, that's mixed use with 150 feet in height through bonus provisions, also allows some conversions of hotel to multifamily at a 1-to-1 rate. Development area F, TOD-UC, residential uses currently exist within the existing Strawn Tower or redevelopment of that with residential capping out at 120 feet in height. Transportation provisions that are included would be, as you can see, Phase 1 improvements located along development area D and E. Phase 2 improvements would be located along B1, B2, and E2. During Phase 1, Bland Street extension would include signalization and pedestrian improvements with Cleveland Ave, extension from Bland Street extension to Caldwell Street, and a new street connection between Cleveland Ave and Euclid. And then during Phase 2, Cleveland Ave extension from Rensselaer Avenue to Bland Street extension, and also a contribution of $100,000 for improvements to the South Boulevard corridor or South End area as requested by CDOT, 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalks along all public streets, and also replace the existing cat shelter pad along South Boulevard. That's stop 29 to 90. That would all be coordinated with CATS through permitting. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. Do have still some outstanding issues related to transportation, some technical revisions related to transportation and land use to work through. It is generally consistent with the recommendation for community activity center. There are some consistencies with the neighborhood 2 portion of the site, but because there are some non-residential uses in there, it is deemed inconsistent. So we would take, essentially, if you look back at the site plan where the Caldwell Street extension comes through the site, really that front half would go to that activity center for community activity center, and then the back half would basically go to neighborhood center, which aligns generally with N2 in terms of height, but again, those uses are where we start to get a little bit out of consistency overall with neighborhood 2. But again, staff recognizes this petition was approved previously, and we're making some general updates to the plan, so hopefully we can move the development forward. And that's, again, our presentation. Do you recommend approval upon the resolutions of those issues? And we'll take any questions following the petitioner's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Grant, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, members of council. Bridget Grant, working with the Fallon Company with my colleague Jeff Brown. We have with us tonight Marissa Thompson and Brian Awe with the Fallon Group, in case you wondered who was sticking around for this long night. Michael Wickline with DRG, our transportation expert, and Matt with the Stewart Group on the design side. As Dave mentioned, this petition was rezoned back in 2010 to TODMO and TODRO. We have not changed any of the requested entitlements. I would look at this more as a technical cleanup to align the zoning with the current districts. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Move to close.
Second? No, go ahead.
It's okay. Ms. Bridget, thank you for the work in the Dilworth community. And I want to say that this has been a good collaboration with the Dilworth Community Association. I have regular set cadence of conversations with them, and we've been discussing this project. So I think this is a good example of how you can work and collaborate with community to ensure that new development has an opportunity to integrate within the neighborhood, and allow constituents to feel like they are embraced and that their community continues to maintain a charm. So I just encourage you to continue those conversations. We have very involved constituents in Dilworth Community Association. They're fantastic stewards, and so I'm looking forward to how this will advance over the next few months.
Thank you for your comment, which reminds me, we do have a letter of support from the Dilworth Community Association after months of work with them, so thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We do have a motion that's been made and properly second. Any further discussion? None. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please raise your hand.
Merry Christmas.
That's unanimous. You have a motion to adjourn. So moved. A second.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
All right. No.
Anybody? Last one?
See y'all next year.
All in favor?
All right.
Unanimous. Thank you all for a great day.
Good holiday, everybody. Thank you.
Second. Second. Discussion.